Chapter 610. At this moment, she suddenly felt a strange movement in her dantian. Chu Luiyue looked over and realized that the movement was coming from the Black Pyramid. However, it only lasted for a while before quickly dissipating as if nothing had happened. That's strange, she frowned. This thing had always been quiet. Except for the time when it caused a ruckus in the Tianling God realm, it had been very obedient. That movement just now was definitely not her imagination. She suddenly thought of something and looked up at her surroundings. There was nothing on the flattened mountain top. The mountain breeze blew, and the leaves rustled. Apart from that, there was nothing else. She looked around for a while, and after confirming that everything was normal, she retracted her gaze. Could it be that I'm really overthinking? She thought that the boss of the Precious Treasure Pavilion had come just now, otherwise, she really didn't know how to explain this movement. However, the forest was silent. Chu Luiyue thought for a while, put this matter aside, and started sharpening her sword again. Every time she sharpened it, a spark would burst out from it. The bright light shone on her face, and her eyes shone brightly. A gentle breeze blew past. The next day, Chu Luiyue went down the mountain to 100 Herbs building to get herbs. Chang Wanzhou's body recovered faster than she expected, and the consumption of herbs was self-evident. The ones she bought previously could only last for a short period of time. Therefore, she came to 100 Herbs building today to discuss with them about getting more. As soon as she reached the entrance of 100 Herbs building, a servant immediately greeted her warmly. "Miss Chu, you're finally here. Please come in." Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. Why did these people's attitudes towards her seem to be more eager than before? "I'm just here to get some herbs. Why does it seem like something big has happened? Even if I'm a black gold card VIP now, this seems a little too much." The servant had already bowed and invited her in. At the same time, he said, "General Manager Yu happens to be upstairs. Would you like to meet him?" Chu Luiyue smiled and shook her head. "No need. I'm just here to get the herbs I ordered. General Manager Yu is a busy man, so I won't waste his time." After buying all the things in the Yuchi song, she came to the 100 Herbs building to pick some common herbs. She didn't spend much on other things. Although this wasn't a small expense, it was just a drop in the ocean for Chu Luiyue. As soon as he finished speaking, he heard a familiar voice coming from the stairs. "I'm more than happy to have Miss Chu here. How could I possibly dislike Miss Chu for wasting my time?" Yu Ling walked down the stairs with a smile. God knows that he didn't sleep well last night. He came here early in the morning just to wait for Chu Luiyue. Now that he had finally come, how could he leave just like that? "The herbs you requested have already been prepared. I'll bring them to you in a moment." As Yu Ling spoke, his gaze inadvertently swept over Chu Luiyue's hand. That Qian Kun ring seemed to belong to Master. Yu Ling's eyes twitched. Last time, the universe ring on Chu Luiyue's hand was Jianfengqi's. Now it was Master's in the blink of an eye. Speaking of which, he was the one who said it, but even he didn't expect that Master would immediately send Yan Qing to deliver the universe ring in person after the news was sent back. Fortunately, he had realized Chu Luiyue's identity yesterday. Now when he saw the ring on her hand, he could still maintain a calm face. Otherwise, he was afraid that he couldn't control his expression. Chu Luiyue looked at him strangely and asked with a smile, "I heard that General Manager Yu has always been elusive. But recently, it seems that you often appear here." She had been here 3 times and she had met him twice. Yu Ling laughed. "Miss Chu, after all, I'm the manager of the 100 Herbs building. Where else can I be?" He glanced behind Chu Luiyue and asked curiously, "Why are you here? Why did Miss Chu come here alone today? Where's the young man from before?" Chu Luiyue raised her eyebrows. "Wanzhou? He's still cultivating. So I came here myself." "Why? General Manager Yu seems to be quite curious about Wanzhou." Yu Ling immediately waved his hand and laughed. No, Miss Chu, please don't misunderstand. It's just that you came here together before, but today you came here alone. I'm a little curious." Chu Luiyue smiled slightly and didn't continue to say anything. Yu Ling asked tentatively, "Then, the medicinal materials you came here to take today are all prepared for him?" Chu Luiyue gave him a meaningful look. Yu Ling seemed to be particularly curious about her. "Oh no, about Chang Wanzhou today," she said ambiguously, partly. Yu Ling was secretly anxious. He originally wanted to take the chance to get some information from Chu Luiyue, but she was watertight, and he could not get anything out of her. He knew that if he continued to ask like this, Chu Luiyue would definitely be suspicious, so he immediately changed the topic. He glanced at her hand, and a trace of surprise appeared on his face. He seemed to ask inadvertently, Miss Chu's interspatial ring looks extraordinary." Chu Luiyue lowered her eyes and glanced at it. It was indeed quite eye-catching to wear this interspatial ring. Anyone with some eyesight could basically see that this thing was extraordinary. However, she still chose to wear it. Hearing Yu Ling's question, she smiled slightly and said, "Someone gave it to me." Yu Ling asked with a smile, "The person who can give this thing to you must be quite noble, and he should have a close relationship with Miss Chu, right?" Chu Luiyue rubbed the interspatial ring on her hand. It was cold to the touch, smooth and delicate. "It's my..." Halfway through her words, she suddenly stopped. Yu Ling was obviously inquiring about her. Could it be that he had heard something, or he had other intentions? Chu Luiyue glanced at him calmly. Recalling his abnormality today, she really felt uneasy. A sentence lingered between her lips for a moment, but she swallowed it back. She smiled at Yu Ling. "It's a gift from a friend of mine." At the same time, in a room on the third floor, Rong Xiu slowly let go of his hand. A teacup shattered silently, and spiderweb-like cracks spread all over it. However, for some reason, the teacup didn't collapse, and it still maintained its previous intact appearance. The tea inside slowly flowed out of the cracks and soon spread on the table, forming a pool of irregular water stains. Yanqing, who was standing next to him, felt a chill all over her body. She couldn't wait to disappear from here immediately. After a moment, Rong Xiu's thin lips curled up slightly, with a faint smile. "Friend?" Yanqing closed her eyes in despair. "It's over." Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 611. Not only did he have Chang Wanzhou to serve him, but now he didn't even have the title of master's fiancé. Yanqing lowered his head, hoping that his master would treat him as an invisible person. He didn't hear anything, Yanqing. Rong Xiu opened his mouth, his tone cold. Yanqing hurriedly replied, "Yes, master." "How long has I been away from the capital?" "Master, it's been 27 days. Rong Xiu frowned slightly. "I left the capital on the same day as you, so it should be 27 days since we last met." His tone was still calm, as if he was just talking about an ordinary thing. However, Yanqing felt that his body was getting colder and colder. He quickly looked up and saw that the puddle of water on the table had silently frozen into ice. He had to bite the bullet and said, "Downstairs." Yu Ling was also stunned when he heard this. Friend, didn't master say that this was madam? Why did they become friends with Chu Luiyue?" He struggled to ask. "They shouldn't be ordinary friends, right? Such a precious thing. What's wrong with General Manager Yu today? Why are you suddenly so interested in my affairs?" Chu Luiyue interrupted him with a smile. Yu Ling glanced at her vigilant expression and realized that she seemed to have misunderstood. He really didn't mean anything else. He just wanted to ask a few more questions on behalf of his master. Yu Ling still wanted to defend himself, but he was afraid that he would make things worse in this situation. He could only force a smile and said, "Miss Chu, please don't misunderstand. I just asked casually." At this moment, the servant brought the prepared herbs over. Chu Luiyue didn't continue to pursue the matter. She took the things and put them into the universe ring. "By the way, there's one more thing that I need General Manager Yu's help with today. The herbs that I ordered before are not enough recently, so I want to double the amount on the basis of first. I wonder if General Manager Yu..." Yes. That's not a problem at all." Yu Ling did not say anything and immediately agreed. Seeing that he had achieved his goal, Chu Luiyue did not stay any longer and quickly left. Yu Ling only turned around and went upstairs after her figure had completely disappeared from his sight. Just as he walked to the door of the room, before he even walked in, he already felt an unusually cold aura. Yu Ling raised his eyes and quickly exchanged a look with Yanqing. There was some sympathy in Yanqing's eyes. Of all things to talk about with Chu Luiyue, he just had to talk about the interspatial ring. Not only did he want to chat, he even wanted to ask who had sent it. Now this was great. He asked such a question. Yu Ling became even more nervous. Sure enough, the conversation just now had been heard by the master. But he didn't expect Chu Luiyue to say that. Wasn't this shooting himself in the foot? Master, Yu Ling said in a trembling voice. His back was already drenched in cold sweat. Rong Xiu asked softly. Did she ask for more medicinal materials just now? Yu Ling said hurriedly. Miss Lu, you said that she wanted twice as much as before. Do the 100 Herbs building have so many medicinal materials? Well, we do have them for now. But according to the amount that Madam wants, we have to find someone to supply them as soon as possible. In fact, most of the medicinal materials were not very expensive and were very common. But a few of them were very valuable and rare. Even if the 100 Herbs building wanted to take out so many medicinal materials continuously, it was actually not that easy. But don't worry, we dare not slack off on Madam's request. We must fulfill it. Yu Ling said solemnly. Rong Xiu's smile deepened. Oh! Yanqing closed his eyes again. He didn't realize it before, but now he suddenly realized that Yu Ling was really not very smart in this regard. Yu Ling finally realized that something was wrong, and then an idea flashed in his mind. A large part of those medicinal materials were prepared for Chang Wanzhou. Now that she had increased the amount of medicinal materials, it meant that not only was she helping Chang Wanzhou, but she was also doing more than before. Compared to the situation where his master didn't even have a proper title, Yu Ling swallowed hard. He seemed to have taken a few more steps on the road to death. Rong Xiu got up and walked outside. Chu Luiyue walked out of the 100 Herbs building, thinking as she walked. She had a good impression of Yu Ling before, but today was really a little strange. Ordinary people wouldn't ask those questions. As the manager of the 100 Herbs building, how could Yu Ling not know that this was inappropriate? But he still asked. If she hadn't stopped in time, he seemed to have wanted to ask more. I don't know what he's planning to do. Thinking about it, Chu Luiyue came to the place where she sent the letter. She walked in and saw the person who she had asked to help deliver the letter at a glance. She was overjoyed. Perhaps there was a reply. Therefore, she quickened her pace and walked up to the man. She asked, "What's wrong?" "Hello, may I know if there is a reply to the message sent to Country Yaochen?" The man stopped what he was doing and looked at Chu Luiyue. The moment their gazes met, the smile on Chu Luiyue's face froze. This is... The man seemed to have realized what she was thinking and said calmly, "I just returned. I haven't tidied up the things yet. Please wait at the side." Chu Luiyue came back to her senses and nodded. With that, she walked to the side. The man skillfully sorted the letters in his hand and handed them to different people. A man laughed loudly. "Qinqi, after you came back this time, your efficiency seems to have improved a lot." The man smiled and didn't say anything. The man who spoke seemed to be used to this. He only chuckled and looked away. The others were also doing their own things. The man called Qinqi had been working silently. After about half an hour, he finally walked towards Chu Luiyue with a letter in his hand. "This is the reply letter." Chu Luiyue took a look. Mu Hongyu's name was written on the envelope. It should be a letter from Pingjiang King and his wife to Mu Hongyu. She looked up at Qinqi. "Thank you. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 612. Qinqi said, "Miss Chu, you're too polite." Chu Luiyue kept the letter and turned to leave. After taking 2 steps, she suddenly thought of something and turned back to look at Qinqi. "All right, I have some things that I want to send back after packing, but I heard that some things can't pass through heaven's canopy. Can you go back with me and help me check?" Qinqi looked at the man who spoke earlier. That man waved his hand coolly. "Anyway, you've already finished your work for today. Go with Miss Chu. Now, Chu Luiyue was the most popular person in Xiling, and it was rumored that she was extraordinarily rich. Who didn't want to have a relationship with her? Who knows, he might even be rewarded more than the others. Xianxia thanked him and walked to Chu Luiyue's side. "Miss Chu, please." The two of them were silent along the way. When they reached the house, Chu Luiyue invited them to the front hall. After confirming that the surroundings were safe, Chu Luiyue turned around and looked at Xianxia. She quickly walked to him and lowered her voice. "Qi Han." Xianxia's eyes moved slightly as he nodded slightly. "Your Highness." It was indeed him. Chu Luiyue was shocked. "Why are you here?" When she first saw Xianxia, she recognized that this person was not the one from before. After their eyes met, she was sure that he was not anyone else but Qi Han, who should still be in Yao Chen. Qi Han said, "You're alone in Xiling. I was really worried. After receiving your letter, I replaced Xianxia and returned." Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. You're taking too much of a risk." Qi Han immediately said, "Your Highness, please rest assured." "Don't worry, Your Highness. This subordinate came here after making complete preparations. They definitely won't notice anything amiss." The reaction of the man who praised him today was enough to explain everything. "I know you're very good at this, so there won't be any problems. I'm worried about something else," Chu Luiyue said and rubbed her brows. "Didn't you say that Jiang Yuqing had ordered to capture you at all costs? If they find out, the aura of the 13 Yu guards was special. Anyone who was familiar with them could easily recognize them. It was too dangerous for Qi Han to appear so openly in Xiling under Jiang Yuqing's nose. Your Highness, before I came, I hid my aura. If I stood in front of him, he might not be able to detect me." Qi Han's voice was as calm as usual, but he was confident. Chu Luiyue was dazed. She then realized that Qi Han's body had indeed changed. This change was very subtle, but he had completely got rid of his aura. If she had not been so familiar with Qi Han's eyes, she might not have been able to recognize him so quickly. How did you do it?" Chu Luiyue sized him up and asked in shock. Every cultivator would have a different aura because of the martial arts they cultivated. Jiang Yuqing dared to order a full-scale capture of them and force them out of heaven's canopy because of this. Previously, Chu Luiyue didn't let Qi Han accompany her to Xiling because she was worried about this problem. She didn't expect that. He seemed to be a completely different person now. Qi Han said, "Actually, little Hachi has been studying how to solve this problem for more than a year. Some time ago, he said that he came up with a new prescription that might work. This subordinate then went to look for him to find a medicinal pill, and as a result, it really worked. Everyone in the 13 Yu guards was good at different things. For little 8 to be able to do this, it wasn't strange if he thought about it carefully." Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment and asked, "Are you sure this thing will always work?" Qi Han nodded and said, "Little Hachi thought I was just giving it a try. He doesn't know that I've already found you and come to Xiling. If he knew, he would definitely come over immediately. You did well. Now is indeed not a good time to tell them." Chu Luiyue crossed his arms and pondered for a long time before saying, "Since you're already here, you might as well stay. It's easier to do things with Xianxia's identity." The 7 colds all agreed. Chu Luiyue's heart calmed down a little as she sat down. He asked casually, "How's the situation in country Yao Chen?" Qi Han's expression turned solemn. "Your Highness, everything is fine in the imperial capital. However, Tai Yin Academy was ambushed half a month ago and suffered heavy casualties. Now, many students have been dismissed and have gone to other academies." Chu Luiyue was really shocked this time. He suddenly looked up at Qi Han. "How did this happen? Tai Yin Academy was the top academy in country Xingluo. No one dared to offend it. How did it get ambushed and become like this overnight?" Qi Han shook his head. "Country Xingluo has kept this matter under wraps. There's almost no news. They've been investigating the mastermind, but it seems like they haven't found any useful clues." Chu Luiyue suddenly thought of something and asked, "How's the investigation on Yang Jianqing and Heng Jingchua?" Qi Han shook his head. "After such a thing happened, everyone is in danger. The investigation has been forced to stop." Chu Luiyue's heart sank. Indeed, someone wanted to stop the investigation. However, she was in Xiling now, so she couldn't find out more. After that, she asked a few more questions and let Qi Han go back. If he stayed here for too long, it would inevitably attract attention. After sending Qi Han back, Chu Luiwei returned to the Chongshu Pavilion. However, as soon as he reached the top of the mountain, he saw Yi Ran running over. Her eyes were bright and she said excitedly, "Louis, you have a friend looking for you." Chu Luiwei was stunned. Friend? She didn't have many friends in Xiling. Who could be looking for her? Chu Luiwei asked, "Who is it?" Jian Fengqi? Yi Ran shook his head vigorously. "Oh no. We've never seen him before. He's been here for a while. He's waiting for you." Chu Luiwei walked forward in confusion. Digression, massive updates, another wave at noon, guess how many more there are today? Finally, I waved my hand and beckoned for monthly votes. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 613. Chu Luiwei returned to her residence and met many senior brothers and sisters on the way. Everyone looked at her strangely, as if they were curious and excited at the same time. "Little junior sister. You're back. Little junior sister. Someone is looking for you." Seeing everyone's reaction, Chu Luiwei raised her eyebrows slightly. This scene was very similar to when Yan Qing came last time. If it wasn't for the fact that everyone was busy preparing for the Great Sect meeting, it would be even more enthusiastic than the last time. Chu Luiwei greeted them one by one and walked to her door under everyone's burning gazes. The door was open. She walked in. There were 3 men in the room. Yan Qing, who she had just met a few days ago, was standing respectfully with his hands by his side. Chang Wanzhou stood in the middle of the room with his back straight. At this moment, he was staring coldly at the man standing beside the bookshelf. The atmosphere was cold. Chu Luiwei looked over. It was a tall and slender figure. His clothes were whiter than snow and his sleeves fluttered in the wind. Although it was only his back view, she could still feel the cold and noble aura around him. Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. Her eyes widened slightly and her heart started to beat rapidly. "Rong Xiu?" Hearing the voice, Rong Xiu turned around and his thin scarlet lips curled up slightly. "You here?" There was a faint and gentle smile on his jade-like face. His pair of phoenix eyes were as deep as the starry night. They were enshrouded in a faint light that made one unconsciously sink into them. "It's really him." Chu Luiwei was surprised and happy. She almost couldn't believe her eyes. "Why you here? Didn't he return to Mingyue Tianshan?" In the blink of an eye, he actually appeared in front of her. So the friend that Yi Ran mentioned just now was him? No wonder the senior brothers and sisters revealed such gossipy and curious expressions. Such a monstrous figure would become the focus of everyone's attention no matter where he was. Rong Xiu put down the book in his hand and smiled faintly. "I've been busy with something recently and happened to pass by here, so I thought I'd come and see you." Confusion flashed across Chu Luiwei's heart. What was Rong Xiu busy with that he would pass by the West Hill? However, this thought only flashed through his mind for a moment before it was quickly replaced by the joy of reunion. The two of them had only been apart for less than a month, but she felt like a long time had passed. The longing that had been suppressed in the deepest part of his heart seemed to have been torn open and surged out. Rong Xiu saw that there seemed to be a twinkle in her eyes. His heart moved and he walked towards Chu Luiwei. He stood still in front of Chu Luiwei, looked down, and scrutinized her face. Then, he wrapped his arm around her slender waist and pulled her into his arms. Chang Wanzhou's face turned cold. Just as he was about to step forward, he sensed a dangerous gaze from the side. He looked up. Yan Qing raised her eyebrows slightly and looked at him with undisguised warning in her eyes. What a joke! His master had chased him all the way to the West Hill. It was not easy for him to see the person he cared about the most. Who would dare to stop him at this time? "Master, I'll take my leave." Yan Qing bowed respectfully and then walked out. When she passed by Chang Wanzhou, she paused and raised her chin. "Chang Wanzhou, right? I heard that you have good strength. Why don't we go out and have a competition?" Chang Wanzhou glanced at him coldly, but he did not move. The man in white said that he was Chu Liuyue's friend. However, when he saw Yan Qing, Chang Wanzhou realized that this man should be the one who gave him the interspatial ring. Obviously, he had a special relationship with Chu Liyue. Yan Qing closed her eyes. Why were the children nowadays so insensible? Without saying anything, she directly clamped Chang Wanzhou's arm and dragged him out. Chang Wanzhou immediately wanted to resist, but he found that he could not get rid of Yan Qing's hand at all. He was no match for Yan Qing at all. In this way, Yan Qing directly took him out, leaving him no time to refute. Before leaving, Yan Qing considerately closed the door. Chu Liyue put her arms around Rong Xiu's thin waist and pressed her face against his chest. She could clearly hear the rhythm of his heartbeat. The sound seemed to be transmitted from her eardrums to her heart. Again and again. The familiar cold fragrance lingered at the tip of her nose. The place where they hugged was warm and ironed. Somewhere in the bottom of her heart seemed to be filled in an instant. It was not until she heard the sound of the door closing that she raised her head and took a look. Why does Yan Qing suddenly want to compete with Xiaozhou? Rong Xiu's long eyelashes moved slightly. Xiaozhou? Chu Liyue raised her head and looked at him. Yes, the child with short blonde hair just now, Chang Wanzhou. Rong Xiu hugged her tighter, and their bodies were tightly pressed against each other. He leaned close to her ear as if he was bewitching her. Don't think about unrelated people. Now, only me. Immediately, he lowered his head, and his crimson lips fell between Chu Liyue's eyebrows. The slightly cold temperature made Chu Liyue's body tremble slightly. Then, he gradually moved down, and his kisses covered the sky and the earth. Her eyebrows, the corners of her eyes, the tip of her nose, her cheeks, his movements were very light, but they were filled with forbearance and a strong longing for her. He loved and cherished her to the extreme, as if he was treating the most precious existence in the world. Wherever it passed, it seemed to roll up sparks, scorching and scalding. Finally, he kissed her lips. Her legs were weak, so she had to hold him tighter. Her fingers, which were grabbing his clothes, curled slightly and rubbed several creases on his clothes. Warm breaths intertwined, and she was dizzy as if she had lost her direction. Chu Liyue let out a soft moan between her lips and teeth. It was an extremely unpleasant sound of tenderness and softness. Rong Xiu's heart seemed to be burned by something, and then he finally let her go. He held her waist with one hand and gently stroked her long hair with the other. Chu Liyue looked up at him. Her eyes seemed to be full of autumn water, and her cheeks were flushed. Rong Xiu's fingertips unconsciously rubbed her waist, and then he kissed her eyes. His voice was low and hoarse, like an order, but also like a desire. Don't look at me like that. In front of her, the self-control that he was so proud of crumbled bit by bit. Chapter 614. Chu Liyue blinked. Seeing the bottomless abyss in his eyes, she tactfully stopped teasing him. Rong Xiu exhaled softly. He missed her when he couldn't see her, but when he saw her, his longing didn't ease at all. Instead, it became even stronger. Even if she was right in front of him, he still missed her. He sat down and pulled Chu Liyue into his arms. He hugged her from behind and gently rested his chin on her shoulder. Chu Liyue looked at him sideways. After not seeing him for a while, he seemed to have lost some weight. What has he been busy with recently? Rong Xiu, how long do you plan to stay in West Hill this time? Chu Liyue played with his slender and fair hand and asked. Rong Xiu thought for a moment. His voice was still a little lazy and hoarse. Undecided? Undecided? Chu Liyue was a little puzzled. Just as she was about to continue asking, Rong Xiu took the initiative to speak. The Chang Wanzhou. I haven't seen him before. It seems that he thinks highly of you. Chu Liyue asked. Why do you say that? Rong Xiu raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly. When he heard that I was here to look for you, he acted as if he was facing a great enemy. From the beginning until you came back. If it weren't for Yan Qing just now, he would have continued to stay. Chu Liyue couldn't help but laugh. Although a certain someone looked calm and collected, but it was so sour. He's my follower now, so naturally, he's especially concerned about my affairs. That child is stubborn. You don't have to take it to heart, Chu Liyue said and kissed the corner of his lips. He knew you before, so of course he was very wary of you. But from now on, he knows your identity, so naturally, he won't be like that anymore. Rong Xiu looked up with a faint smile. Puma. Chu Liyue looked at his expression and suddenly felt a little guilty. Oh, it's your fiancé? Rong Xiu's smile deepened. Really? But after I came to West Hill, I seem to have heard some rumors. Chu Liyue thought to himself that this was indeed the case. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You said it yourself, it's all just rumors. I don't even know how the outside world got into such a state. One moment it was Jian Fengqi, the next it was Mu Qinghe. After she heard it, she actually didn't take it to heart at all because it was too ridiculous. However, from the looks of it, a certain someone seemed to mind. She turned around and teased with a smile. If you don't like it, I'll clarify it later. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows and glanced at her. The corners of his eyes and the tips of his brows seemed to carry a bit of undisciplined nobility. No need. Chu Liyue was surprised. Rong Xiu was clearly very concerned about this matter. It wouldn't take much effort for her to clarify it. Why did he say that there was no need? Rong Xiu paused and his thin lips curled slightly. I have my own plans. He was indeed concerned about this matter, but he was also very clear about her current situation in West Hill. On the surface, she was famous and had limitless prospects. But in reality, she had also attracted a lot of jealousy and hatred. There were countless pairs of eyes staring at her in the dark now. The slightest movement might attract a wave of unnecessary trouble. Moreover, her status in West Hill now was actually not high. If she were to do such a thing, it would instead seem like she was taking the initiative to scam him. He couldn't bear to do it no matter what. So it was better for him to do these things. Chu Liyue didn't know what he was thinking, but seeing his lazy expression, she didn't continue to dwell on this matter. She then talked about some things that happened after she came to West Hill. Rong Xiu listened patiently and gently. In fact, he already knew about these things. But now that he heard her say it personally, it was a completely different feeling. It was as if every word suddenly had warmth and power, leaving deep and shallow marks in his heart. He listened patiently and occasionally asked a few questions. One of them was talking with great interest, while the other was listening with great interest. For a moment, it was quite interesting. After a long time, after she finished talking about these things, Chu Liyue suddenly thought of something and asked, I've always been talking about my matters. Why don't you talk about yours? Is there anything interesting? Rong Xiu smiled faintly and said, My side is as usual. Without you, there's nothing interesting. It's fine not to talk about it. Chu Liyue's chest warmed. Did he mean, only things related to her were interesting to him? This person, oh, there's one thing that's a little difficult. Rong Xiu frowned slightly and seemed to be in a difficult position. What is it? I came to West Hill in a hurry this time and haven't found a suitable place to stay. Because I don't know how long I'll have to stay here, it's a little troublesome. Rong Xiu rubbed his eyebrows and seemed to be worried about it. Chu Liyue almost didn't think and immediately said, Then you can live in my house. The one I told you about before, the one that the pavilion master gave me? Although it's not big, it's definitely enough for you to live in. It's just that the house is relatively simple. I don't know if you're used to living there. Rong Xiu's lips curled into a loving smile. Of course I'm used to living in your place. Then thank you in advance. Outside the courtyard, Yan Qing and Chang Wanzhou stood facing each other. Chang Wanzhou's clothes were torn and his hair was very messy. His breathing was heavy, and it was obvious that he had just experienced a difficult battle. On the other hand, Yan Qing's face wasn't red and he wasn't out of breath. He was calm and composed. Boy, you're talented, but now, you're still a little inexperienced. Chapter 6:15. Yan Qing rubbed her eyes and looked at it a few times to confirm that she was not seeing wrongly. That was indeed a rag. After a while, Chang Wanzhou carried another bucket of water in and did not come out again. This Yan Qing pointed in that direction in shock. Miss Lu Yu he is? Chu Luiwei glanced at it and waved her hand indifferently. It's fine. He has to clean this place every day at this time. After cleaning up, he will naturally go back. At first, she refused. This was because Chang Wanzhou cleaned up very cleanly every time. There was really no need to do this every day. Actually, she had tried to persuade him before, but it was useless. In Chang Wanzhou's understanding, this was what he should do, so he was diligent and serious every time. If she did not let him clean, he would even question Chu Luiwei if she thought that he did not do well. After a few times, Chu Luiwei simply gave up and let him be. Yan Qing, what was wrong with him? On the other side, the moment Rong Xiu came out, he sensed several gazes in the dark around him. His brows twitched slightly, and he held Chu Luiwei's hand even tighter. Let's go. Chu Luiwei retracted her gaze and nodded. However, before she could take 2 steps, she stopped again and sighed helplessly. Senior brothers and senior sisters, please come out. As soon as she finished speaking, the surroundings fell silent for a moment. Then, a group of people surged out from the room beside them, as well as from all corners. Lu Xiao, who was standing in front, laughed and scratched the back of his head. What a coincidence, ha! This is Rong Xiu. Chu Luiwei spoke straightforwardly. Lu Xiao's voice stopped abruptly. He coughed awkwardly and quickly exchanged glances with everyone. He originally wanted to explain to little junior sister, but little junior sister's eyesight was too good. However, Chu Luiwei's next sentence made everyone's eyes light up. He's also my fiancé. This simple and indifferent sentence was like a sudden clap of thunder that fell down. Everyone was curious about Rong Xiu's identity. They didn't expect Chu Luiwei to admit it so directly. So junior sister already has a fiancé? Since he's junior sister's fiancé, he's naturally half a member of the Chongshu Pavilion. If you need anything in the future, just let me know. Don't stand on ceremony. Little junior sister, you never told me that you have such an outstanding fiancé. Everyone exclaimed in surprise and praised him. Needless to say, this man in white was the most outstanding person they had ever seen. Judging from his imposing manner, he did not seem to be an ordinary person. Most importantly, although he had concealed his aura, one could still feel a faint trace of pressure from him. His strength was definitely not weak. Such a person was indeed worthy of little junior sister. Chu Luiwei knew that if she didn't say it today, her senior brothers and senior sisters would never forget this matter. So, she might as well be frank about Rong Xiu's identity. Then, she introduced these people to Rong Xiu one by one. Rong Xiu had a smile on his face from beginning to end. He greeted everyone gently and politely. His speech and behavior were all the imposing manner of a noble son from an aristocratic family. Everyone's curiosity was finally satisfied, but they also had some faint doubts. Didn't they say that little junior sister's background was ordinary? But whether it was little junior sister or Rong Xiu, they all looked very extraordinary. This noble aura that exuded from his bones was definitely not something that could be raised by an ordinary family. I came in a hurry today and didn't have time to prepare anything for senior brothers and senior sisters. I can only give you a small gift first. Thank you for taking care of you, during this period of time. As he spoke, he raised his finger. Yan Qing. Yan Qing immediately went forward and walked to Yi Ranran to present something. Miss Yi, please accept it. Chu Luiwei glanced at it and realized that it was also a universe ring. However, it seemed to be just an ordinary universe ring. It was different from the one Rong Xiu gave her. Yi Ranran was flattered and looked at Lu Xiao and the others in a panic. This didn't seem appropriate, right? Lu Xiao immediately laughed. You're too polite. Lu Yu is our little junior sister. It's only right for us to treat her well. Logically speaking, we should be the ones giving you a greeting gift. Before he could finish speaking, Yan Qing had already placed the universe ring in Yi Ranran's hand. She walked in front of Lu Xiao and took out a second universe ring. Young Master Lu, please. Lu Xiao was stunned. He looked at the universe ring in Yi Ranran's hand, and then looked at the one in front of him. So each of them had one? Rong Xiu said, "It's not valuable. It's nothing valuable. Please feel free to accept it." Since he had already said so much, it was not appropriate to refuse. Lu Xiao could only say, Then, thank you, little brother-in-law." The corners of Chu Liyue's eyes twitched violently. She suddenly had the urge to flee. "Little brother-in-law." She quickly glanced at Rong Xiu, only to see his calm expression and a smile on his lips. Instead, he was quite satisfied with this address. "Senior brother Lu, you're too polite. You is my fiancé. This is what I should do." Chu Liyue shuddered. Why did he call him senior brother? "Rong Xiu, is this really appropriate?" Chu Liyue silently pinched the back of Rong Xiu's hand. What exactly was he planning to do? It was just a simple introduction. Why did he make it seem like, in the face of Chu Liyue's silent accusation, Rong Xiu was indifferent? He held her hand and gently scratched her palm. Chu Liyue was speechless. Then, under her shocked gaze, Yanqing quickly gave each of them a universe ring. And he did not address each of them wrongly. After that, Rong Xiu said again, "I can't stay here today. I can't stay for long today, so I'll have to trouble senior martial brother Lu to transfer the gifts for the pavilion master, elder Xia Yi, and the other senior brothers and sisters who didn't come today." After that, Yanqing indeed gave him some more. Lu Xiao could only agree in a daze. "Don't worry, little brother-in-law. I'll definitely give them all." Rong Xiu smiled. "In that case, you and I won't disturb you anymore. Goodbye." After that, he left with Chu Liyue and Yanqing. Everyone watched them leave the mountain in unison. They did not come back to their senses for a long time. Suddenly, a cry of surprise broke out in the crowd. Everyone looked over and saw a man holding a universe ring with a shocked expression. This, Yi Ran asked in puzzlement. "What's wrong?" The man swallowed his saliva with great difficulty. "Little junior sister's fiancé seems to be extraordinarily rich. Digression, I seem to have an allergic reaction to food. I'll go get some medicine. I'll update from time to time in the afternoon. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network." Chapter 616. Chu Liyue and Rong Xiu walked all the way down the mountain. Finally, she couldn't help but ask, "What did you put in the universe rings that you gave to senior brothers and sisters?" Rong Xiu smiled faintly and said, "Just some things that they can use." Chu Liyue pondered for a moment. "White crystal coins." Rong Xiu smiled but didn't say anything. Chu Liyue thought to herself that it was indeed so. Giving white crystal coins was basically the most convenient and least likely gift. But, why did you prepare so much? Could it be that before you came, you're now famous in West Hill, and Chongshu Pavilion is also one of the most important sections? It's not that difficult to find out some things. But you gave so much at once, it seems that they're good to you. It's only right to give them a small gift. Seeing that Rong Xiu spoke so casually, Chu Liyue finally couldn't help but tug at his sleeve. "Rong Xiu, tell me honestly, where did you get so much money? If you give me all this money, what will you do?" According to her understanding of Rong Xiu, since he had given her money, it definitely wouldn't be a small amount. Not to mention the money that he gave her, Rong Xiu smiled and glanced at her. "If you is worried that I don't have money, you don't have to. I can still afford it." Yanqing followed behind, and the corner of her mouth twitched slightly. "Miss Lu, you actually doubted Master's financial resources." Hearing Rong Xiu's words, Chu Liyue was slightly relieved. In fact, she also knew that since Rong Xiu was so generous, he definitely didn't have to worry about money. She was just curious about how he did it. Could it be because of the identity of the Holy Sun? They arrived at the house in West Hill City. Chu Liyue brought the two of them in and said, "Don't worry. I just moved here not long ago, so I've basically just cleaned everything up. There are a few rooms you can take a look at and choose one that you like." Rong Xiu looked lazy. "There's no need for such trouble. This room is excellent." Chu Liyue turned around and followed his line of sight. "That's mine. You want to stay in my room?" Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. Weren't we the same in the past? Chu Liyue's eyes twitched. In the past, it was always him who refused to leave. Seeing through Rong Xiu's thoughts, Chu Liyue simply gave up struggling. If you want, it's not impossible. I don't usually come back to this place often, so basically, no one will come to disturb me. Rong Xiu did not mind. If she didn't come, he could go. Chu Liyue stayed with him for a while longer before finally leaving. Jiang residence. Fourth young miss, this is the Bingji ointment that eldest young master specially asked for from the palace. It is said that as long as you use it consistently for half a month, any wound will not leave a scar. As the maidservant spoke, she carefully applied the ointment for Jiang Yuji. Jiang Yuji leaned against the bed with her eyes closed, not saying anything. The maidservant scooped out a spoonful and gently applied it on her face. Hiss, ugh. A sharp pain like an icicle came, and Jiang Yuji cried out in pain. She sat up and slapped the maidservant with the back of her hand. Slap. It hurt so much. What did you do? The maidservant was slapped to the ground. A palm print quickly appeared on her face, and her arm was bleeding. However, she still carefully held the Bingji ointment in her hand, afraid that it would break. If this bottle of Bingji ointment was destroyed, she would not be able to pay for it with her life. This servant knows her mistake. This servant knows her mistake. She quickly got up and knelt beside Jiang Yuji's bed, kowtowing and admitting her mistake. Jiang Yuji looked at her irritably and snatched the Bingji ointment away. Get lost. The maidservant retreated in panic. Yes, yes. However, just as she was about to get up, Jiang Yuji glanced at her from the corner of her eye and saw her pale face hanging down. There were tears on her cheeks, and she looked pitiful. The anger in her heart burned even more. Kneel outside. Slap yourself. He would only stop when his face started bleeding. The maidservant was startled. Fourth miss, why aren't you going? The maidservant bit her lip and retreated. She knelt outside the door and began to slap herself. Every slap was very hard. The crisp sound of a slap was heard. Jiang Yuji finally calmed down a little. She opened the Bingji ointment and prepared to apply it herself. What are you doing? Before she could do anything, she heard Jiang Yuqing's voice from outside. Eldest young master, this servant did something wrong. How can you behave like this at fourth Mrs. door? You can leave first. Thank you, eldest young master. This servant will take her leave. Then Jiang Yuqing walked in. This is already the fifth servant you've taught a lesson to in the past few days. When are you going to stop? Jiang Yuji put the Bingji ointment on the table with a bang, her expression ugly. Big brother, did you come here today just to teach me a lesson? I'm the fourth miss of the Jiang family. Is it wrong to discipline a few servants? Jiang Yuqing snorted. Don't think that I don't know. These maidservants didn't do anything wrong. You're the one who kept holding on to them. It's precisely because you're the master that you have to pay attention. If word gets out, others will only say that you're domineering, spoiled, and willful. Jiang Yuji suddenly stood up and quickly walked in front of Jiang Yuqing. My face is already like this. Don't tell me you won't allow me to vent? Jiang Yuqing's expression was cold. Let's not talk about this first. I've already sent someone to investigate what happened that day. Jiang Yuji's hair stood on end under his gaze. She couldn't help but take half a step back. Big brother, did you find out something? Jiang Yuqing sneered. Aren't you the clearest about what happened that day? I've asked you for so long, but you've never said that you caused such a ruckus at 100 Herbs building. Jiang Yuji immediately felt guilty. I didn't do anything. If you didn't do anything, why would 100 Herbs building blacklist you and threaten to stop doing business with you? When this incident happened, many people saw it. It was easy to find out by asking around. Jiang Yuji was speechless for a moment. So what? If he doesn't want to do it, so be it. It's not like this is the only shop in Xiling City that sells herbs. Do they really dare to do anything to me? Seeing that she was still so stubborn, Jiang Yuqing was extremely disappointed. Things had already come to this point, yet she was still so naive, childish, and self-righteous. 100 Herbs building has a deep foundation and a powerful background. Even I don't want to face them head-on. Why are you so bold? Do you really think that you're so great as the Jiang family's fourth miss? Jiang Yuji's expression changed. Big Brother's words were too harsh. But before she could speak, Jiang Yuqing continued. No wonder you were followed and beaten up not long after you left. And you still say that you didn't offend anyone? Jiang Yuji finally reacted. Big Brother, you mean, that masked man is from 100 Herbs building? Digression. Due to sensitive words and other issues, Chapter 613 is in the process of being revised. Everyone, please be patient. Chapter 617. We can't be sure yet, but there aren't many people who would dare to attack you so blatantly. Jiang Yuji couldn't care less about her grievances and anger. She hurriedly said, since we know it's them, then go and arrest them. How can it be that easy? Jiang Yuqing frowned and walked to the side. There's no evidence to prove that they did it. How can we arrest them casually? Besides, you didn't even see that person's face. Who can we arrest? Jiang Yuji was stunned. Then go and investigate. Brother, don't you have a few capable subordinates? The other party dared to be so brazen, which means that they aren't afraid of investigation. Besides, the 100 Herbs building is quite famous in West Hill. How can we investigate just because we want to? That was the largest medicinal herb store in West Hill. Even he had to think twice before making a move. Jiang Yuji reacted for a while and asked in disbelief, Then, is this matter over? I was beaten up for nothing? Jiang Yuqing was silent for a moment and asked, I heard that it was Yu Ling who personally ordered someone to invite you out that day? I've seen him a few times before. This person is shrewd and sophisticated. If it weren't for special circumstances, he wouldn't have been so ruthless. Besides, he knew your identity, but still insisted on doing so. It shows how serious the matter is. What did you do that day? Jiang Yuji gritted her teeth and hesitated for a while before saying, I just scolded Chu Luiwei a little. Jiang Yuqing's expression froze. Seeing that she couldn't hide it anymore, Jiang Yuji could only tell Jiang Yuqing everything that happened that day. If they hadn't refused to give me those medicinal herbs, I wouldn't have done that. In the end, it was all Chu Luiwei's fault. After hearing this, Jiang Yuqing's face darkened. She really went to find trouble with Chu Luiwei. More importantly, she went to the 100 Herbs building. Even if she went to find Chu Luiwei for a one-on-one fight, it would be better than this. You've forgotten what I told you before, haven't you? Jiang Yuqing's voice was as cold as ice. Jiang Yuji shuddered. Suddenly, she had a flash of inspiration and hurriedly said, That's not right. Brother, this isn't right. I scolded Chu Luiwei that day, but I didn't say anything bad about the 100 Herbs building. But when that Yu Ling heard me scolding Chu Luiwei, he seemed to be angry in an instant. As she spoke, she thought back. The more she thought about it, the more certain she became. That's right. That's it. Previously, when I was buying medicinal herbs, Yu Ling said that they were all prepared for Chu Luiwei and could not be sold to me. When I was talking about this, he was still fine. I remember now. Previously, a few women seemed to have been chased out of 100 Herbs building because they criticized Chu Luiwei. Not only them, but even their family clans were implicated. Later on, they even went to make a fuss, but nothing was done in the end. As Jiang Yuqing listened, his expression gradually became serious. You mean that Chu Luiwei has something to do with the 100 Herbs building? That must be it. Yu Ling also said that because Chu Luiwei was a VIP with a black gold card, Chu Luiwei was not the only customer of the 100 Herbs building. Why didn't such a thing happen before? There was clearly something fishy about this. Jiang Yuqing thought for a moment and hesitated. But didn't Chu Luiwei just come to West Hill? And she was brought here by Mu Qinghe and Jian Fengqi. How could she be related to the 100 Herbs building in such a short time? He paused for a moment, then got up and left. I will investigate this matter personally. During this period, you stay here and don't be willful. Got it. After Chu Luiwei left, she went to Dragon Teeth Mountain. Dragon Teeth Mountain was much bigger than Chong Su Cabinet, and it was also much more lively. When Chu Luiyue arrived at the hall, she saw Jian Fengqi waiting inside. She quickly looked around, but did not see Mu Hongyu. Jian Fengqi said lazily, "Hongyu has become my father's disciple and is still cultivating in the Tianya cave. I have already sent someone to invite her, but it will probably take a while. Sit down and wait." Chu Luiyue smiled and took out a letter. "Since Hongyu is busy cultivating, I won't disturb her. This is a letter from her imperial father. I'll have to trouble young Master Jian to pass it to her when you return." With that, she walked over and prepared to leave after putting the letter on the table beside Jian Fengqi. Suddenly, a familiar fragrance wafted over. Chu Luiyue sniffed and realized that the smell came from Jian Fengqi. A dark look flashed across her eyes. This ambergris was specially provided by her palace. To be precise, only she and her father used to be able to use it. Although the smell on Jian Fengqi's body was very faint, she was sure that it was the smell left behind by the ambergris. Moreover, the fact that the smell lingered in the air meant that Jian Fengqi had stayed at the place where the ambergris was burned for at least 2 hours. She paused and put the letter on the table. She asked casually, "How is Hongyu doing in Dragon Teeth Mountain these days?" Jian Fengqi waved his bone fan. "I take care of her every day. Of course she's doing well." Chu Luiyue looked at him in surprise. "Have you been taking care of Hongyu in Dragon Teeth Mountain these days?" Jian Fengqi raised his eyebrows. "Of course. I was the one who treated her injuries. She's almost healed now. The medicine I used is much better than what you used before." Chu Luiyue was now a 4th-grade celestial physician. Jian Fengqi's level was higher, so the medicine he refined was naturally better. "I see. Thank you, young Master Jian." Chu Luiyue smiled slightly. Suddenly, her expression changed. What kind of fragrance is this?" Jian Fengqi froze. Chu Luiyue sniffed. "Young Master Jian, do you smell a faint fragrance?" Jian Fengqi looked at Chu Luiyue warily. A cold light flashed in his icy eyes. "Oh, my mother often fiddles with some spices. Maybe it's the smell?" Chu Luiyue nodded in understanding. Then, he said with admiration, "The Mountain Lord is really amazing. The Mountain Chieftain's wife is really amazing. This fragrance is even better than the average fragrance. I just don't know how she made it." Jian Fengqi heaved a sigh of relief and looked down. "It's just a normal fragrance, Luiyue." A shout of surprise came from outside. Chu Luiyue looked back and saw Mu Hongyu walking towards him with a face full of excitement and joy. "Luiyue, you came to see me?" Chu Luiyue smiled, took the letter and handed it over. "This is a letter from your father." Mu Hongyu exclaimed and hurriedly opened the letter. Jian Fengqi looked at the two of them and slowly leaned back in his chair. He was too careless. He came back in a hurry and forgot to change his clothes. Chu Luiyue shouldn't be able to recognize the fragrance, right? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 6:18. Mu Hongyu read the letter carefully several times. Her eyes were slightly red. Chu Luiyue patted her shoulder gently. "Hongyu, are you okay?" "I'm fine. Father and mother know that I'm not only alive, but also cultivating in West Hill. They are overjoyed. They told me to cultivate well. In this world, there was probably nothing more rejoicing than regaining something you had lost." Mu Hongyu handed the letter to Chu Luiyue. Luiyue looked. "My father and mother are saying that they want to thank you." Chu Luiyue took the letter and looked at it. A smile bloomed on his face. "Yes, they can be completely relieved now." Jian Fengqi coughed. Mu Hongyu immediately said, "Oh right. Young master, my father and mother have specially thanked you." Jian Fengqi leaned lazily on the chair. He smiled slightly and said as if he didn't care, "It's nothing. What's there to thank me for?" Chu Luiyue glanced at him. If he really didn't care, why did he cough just now? "Hongyu, why did you call young Master Jian young master?" Mu Hongyu explained, "Oh, because everyone on Dragon Teeth Mountain calls him that. If she kept calling him young Master Jian, it would feel a little weird. Therefore, she simply followed suit and shouted the same thing." Chu Luiyue thought about it and agreed. Now that Mu Hongyu was Jianshai's disciple, she had officially joined Dragon Teeth Mountain. She might stay here for a long time in the future. It was a good thing to quickly integrate into everyone. Chu Luiyue smiled and said, "It seems that you're doing well on Dragon Teeth Mountain." Mu Hongyu smiled brightly. Her almond-shaped eyes were bright. "The mountain master and the others treat me very well. And my cultivation speed now seems to be much faster than before. The mountain master said that it's because of my physique. After a while, I should be able to continue breaking through." In the past, her talent was considered outstanding in country Yaoqin, but it wasn't considered top-notch, let alone outside. Now that she possessed the faint essence body, the difference was like heaven and earth compared to before. Even in the entire Tianling dynasty, she could be considered one of the most outstanding geniuses. Chu Luiyue was happy to see her happy. "Since that's the case, I'm relieved. Since the letter has been delivered, I will take my leave first." Mu Hongyu was very reluctant to part with him. "I've just arrived and you're leaving already? Then I'll send you off." Chu Luiyue had an idea. "Sure." The two of them left together. The casual smile on Jian Fengqi's face gradually disappeared. He frowned, got up, and quickly returned to his room. After returning, he quickly changed his clothes. With a spark from his fingertips, the clothes immediately burned. Even when the clothes were completely burned, he still felt that something was wrong. "Men, I want to take a bath." On the other side, Mu Hongyu accompanied Chu Luiyue for a long walk. At night, she would be sharpening the sword on Yanlin Peak. Rong Xiu seemed to be busy as well. He only came to see her once and left very quickly. Chu Luiyue did not ask any more questions and focused on the cloud sky copper sword. A month's time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, it was the day of the sect meeting. Digression. Also, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 619. The sky was clear and there were no clouds in the sky. Early in the morning, many people in Xiling City headed towards Square Stream. That was where the sect meeting was being held. The so-called Square Stream was located in the wilderness southwest of Xiling City. A few hundred years ago, the location of the Square Stream was still a mountain range. Later on, two powerhouses fought for 3 days and 3 nights, raising all the nearby mountains to the ground and leaving a cross-shaped gully on the vast ground. The gully was deep and gradually widened with the passage of time. Now, it had become 2 intersecting deep rifts. The sect meeting was held here every year. This year was no exception. However, the Great Sect Assembly this time was obviously very different from the past. Because everyone knew very well that the ranking of the sects in Xiling City was very likely to change greatly this time. It was still early, but Square Stream was already crowded with people and was very lively. I heard that the 9-Star Alliance plans to challenge the Chongshu Pavilion this time. If they succeed, the title of Chongshu Pavilion as one of the 4 major sects will fall on the head of the 9-Star Alliance. I heard that the Sacred Flame Palace also has this plan. Which one of the sects below them isn't eager to make a move? The Chongshu Pavilion now doesn't live up to its name and is no longer qualified to continue occupying this position. Isn't it just a matter of time before it is replaced? Didn't they say that Yuchi Song recruited 2 good seedlings this time? Maybe. You mean that Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou? The 2 of them are not bad, but I think it's impossible for them to turn the situation around with just the 2 of them. I wonder which sect will be able to take down the Chongshu Pavilion this time. As time passed, the sun gradually rose. People from the major sects also came one after another. According to the previous rules, besides the 4 major sects, there were 4 more places to participate in the competition. The major sects in Xiling City had already gone through a fierce competition. Only the top 4 winners were qualified to come. They were the 9-Star Alliance, the Sacred Flame Palace, the Destiny Manor, and the Lingyun sect. Without a doubt, the leaders of the various sects had all appeared here today. A portion of the sect's elders and disciples had also come along. Most of the young disciples had the arrogance and pride of geniuses on their faces. Their eyes were filled with excitement and eagerness, as if they had a card up their sleeves. This was because not every disciple of the four great sects was qualified to come here. Those who could come here were all top-notch existences in their respective sections. The people from the various sects arrived one after another and exchanged pleasantries with each other. However, their eyes would look to the side from time to time. It was as if they were absent-minded. Many people were discussing this in private. Now that all the major sects are here, only the Chongshu Pavilion is left. Why haven't they come yet? Don't tell me they got stage fright and decided not to come? I heard that there are only a few dozen disciples left in the Chongshu Pavilion. They can't even hold up the stage. There's only 15 minutes left before the start of the competition. If they don't arrive on time, they'll automatically give up. The leader of the 9-Star Alliance, Zhang Hua, laughed and joked. If the Chongshu Pavilion really doesn't come this time, wouldn't it be considered as giving up the position of one of the four great sects? As soon as he finished speaking, a deep and powerful voice came from midair. Even if this old man gives up this position, some people may not be able to take it. The originally noisy crowd instantly quieted down, and everyone looked up in unison. They saw several figures rushing over from midair. The one in front was Yuchi Song. Who was he? It was the Chongshu Pavilion. Under the gaze of countless people, Yuchi Song arrived with his disciples. As soon as he landed, Yuchi Song glanced at Zhang Hua and said calmly, "This old man was just delayed on the way, and someone seems to be eager to take my position in the Chongshu Pavilion?" Zhang Hua choked and sneered. Strength is respect. If you don't have the ability to protect something, do you blame others for being too strong? The two of them were at each other's throats as soon as they met. The atmosphere instantly froze. Many people looked at each other. It seemed that the 9-Star Alliance was determined to win this time. They actually went against the Chongshu Pavilion directly. If they didn't have enough confidence, no one would have fallen out so thoroughly. Yuchi Song remained motionless. That depends on whether you have the ability or not. It's not too late to talk about some things after you win. Otherwise, you'll just be a laughing stock. Zhang Hua waved his sleeves angrily. Stubborn duck. I'd like to see who will be the one to make a fool of themselves today. Seeing that the two sides were getting more and more tense, Xianxia came out to smooth things over. Old Song, you came at the right time. It's time. Shall we start now? Zhang Hua and Yuchi Song both had to give Xianxia face, so they finally stopped arguing. Xianxia said, just like before, the 9-Star Alliance and the other four sects will each choose one of the four great sects to challenge. The four winners will be ranked as the four great sects again. As he spoke, he looked at Zhang Hua and the others in front of him. I wonder if you've already decided which one to challenge? The few of them didn't say anything. Xianxia's eyelids twitched. Then, Zhang Hua glanced at Yuchi Song and sneered, "Unfortunately, all four of us want to challenge the Chongshu Pavilion. None of us are willing to back down, so we haven't decided yet." His tone was full of ridicule, and he didn't hide his contempt for the Chongshu Pavilion. The surroundings were silent for a moment. It was obvious why these four sects chose the Chongshu Pavilion. It could be seen how down and out the Chongshu Pavilion was. The current situation was really ugly, especially for the Chongshu Pavilion. It was simply a great humiliation. However, to everyone's surprise, Yuchi Song's face was still calm, as if he didn't take this matter to heart. Even the disciples standing behind him had calm expressions on their faces. Xianxia looked at Yuchi Song awkwardly. Old Song, I can only leave this to you. Which one do you choose? Having this kind of choice was definitely not something to be happy about. Yuchi Song raised his hand and pointed at Zhang Hua. The 9-Star Alliance. Everyone was stunned for a moment. Even Zhang Hua was a little skeptical. Xianxia frowned. Are you sure? These four sects seem to be of similar strength, but in fact, the 9-Star Alliance was the strongest among them. This was not a good choice for the current Chongshu Pavilion. Yuchi Song nodded. I'm sure. Others were about to ride on their heads. If they didn't fight back, the world would really think that the Chongshu Pavilion was easy to bully. Zhang Hua laughed and licked his lips, revealing a smug and arrogant smile. Good. Today, the 9-Star Alliance will see how strong the Chongshu Pavilion is. Digression, there's one more thing, but it's already very late. It's the same if you read it tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 620. The people from the other sects looked disappointed. Other than the Chongshu Pavilion, the other 3 sects were all powerful. The chances of them winning were very small. Other than secretly envying the 9-Star Alliance, there was nothing they could do. Soon, the remaining sects also began to compete in groups of 2. Dragon Teeth Mountain vs. Sacred Flame Palace. Purple Shao Sword Sect vs. Tianji Manor. Xianfeng Hall vs. Lingyun Sect. The 8 sects were divided into 4 groups and landed in the 4 areas of the Cross Canyon. Although there was a deep canyon in between, the sects could still clearly see each other's battle situation. The onlookers could freely choose which sect they were interested in and go to the corresponding area to watch the battle. Without a doubt, the Chongshu Pavilion and the 9-Star Alliance had the most people. After everyone was in position, someone realized that something was wrong. Strange, did Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou not come? Why didn't I see them among the disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion? It seems so. The 2 of them really didn't come. It can't be. The Chongshu Pavilion doesn't have many capable disciples now. Now that they finally have 2 good seedlings, they actually didn't come? 1 spread to 10, 10 spread to 100. The news that Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou didn't come quickly spread among the crowd. Logically speaking, not all the disciples in a sect would come. This wasn't strange in itself. But the key was that Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou were the first and second in the Wanzheng competition. There was no doubt about their strength. It was really strange that they didn't come. Hearing the discussions around him, Yi Ranran couldn't help but tug at Lu Jiao's sleeve and whisper, "Senior brother Lu, do you think Lu Yu and Wanzhou will still come?" Lu Jiao also lowered his voice. Didn't little junior brother say that he would wait for little junior sister to come together? They should come, right? Recently, junior sister has been going to Yanlin Peak. She seems to be sharpening her sword. The yuan instruments they used were either bought, gifted to them by their elders, or obtained by chance. It was really rare to see him sharpen his own sword. Yi Ranran asked worriedly. Let's hope they come. The 9-Star Alliance has been eyeing us covetously. They definitely won't let go of this opportunity. It was obvious that the Jiaoxing Alliance would definitely pull them down from the position of the 4 major sects at all costs during this great sect meeting. Lu Jiao glanced at the people from the 9-Star Alliance and snorted. If I remember correctly, the 2 people who made things difficult for you in Xenli Garden were disciples of the 9-Star Alliance? Yi Ranran nodded and raised her hand to point. It's that tall and skinny man in purple, and that green-clothed woman beside him. Lu Jiao nodded. Don't worry, we'll definitely win this time. When the time came, he would definitely teach them a lesson. All sorts of discussions could be heard. The people from the Chongshu Pavilion and the 9-Star Alliance each occupied one side, leaving a large empty space in the middle. There were also quite a few people who were standing around to watch the show. Zhang Hua and Yu Qisong faced each other from afar, and the atmosphere was cold. The rules of the competition are the same as before. According to the celestial physician, Shen master, and martial artist, the competition will be held separately. Each competition will send out 9 disciples. 1 point will be awarded for a win, 1 point will be deducted for a loss, and 0 points will be awarded for a draw. After all 27 people have finished competing, they will be judged according to their total points. The one with the highest points will win. Zhang Hua's gaze swept across the disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion and sneered. Yu Qisong, can your Chongshu Pavilion still send out 27 disciples to participate in the competition? Who didn't know that the current Chongshu Pavilion had few talents? There were only a few dozen of them. Other than a few who stayed behind to guard the Chongshu Pavilion, the rest were probably all here. Speaking of which, I have to envy you guys on behalf of my disciples. In our 9-Star Alliance, not to mention the right to participate in the competition. Even if it's just a spot to watch the competition, everyone will fight until their heads bleed. It's not like your Chongshu Pavilion, where anyone can come as long as they're not short of arms or legs. Yuchi Song's gaze was extremely cold. It's better not to be too sure about some things. If you guys still lose to us despite having so many people here, wouldn't that be too embarrassing? Enough nonsense, let's begin. At the same time at Yanlin Peak, on the smooth and tidy mountaintop, a huge black star stone lay across it. A slender woman in red was sitting cross-legged on it, sharpening a sword. She held the sword hilt with one hand and pressed the blade with the other, continuously sharpening it. From beginning to end, she only did that one movement, but every repetition was exactly the same as the previous one. Whether it was the movement, posture, or strength, it was all precise without a trace of error. Every time she moved, sparks would appear at the spot where the sword and the star stone rubbed against each other. Her expression was solemn, and her eyes were fixed on the sword under her hand, as if she would never tire. In fact, she hadn't slept for a day and a night. Since the day before, she had already sensed that this half of the fetal heart was about to be polished out. In other words, as long as she completed the task here, she would be considered to have polished out the entire Quetzal bronze fetal heart. The color of the sparks was gradually changing. The blue color was increasing bit by bit, becoming thicker, and gradually approaching the deep color of the sword. After an unknown period of time, she moved again, and a faint blue flame appeared in front of her eyes. Chu Liuyue's eyes suddenly lit up. Success! Taizu's voice immediately sounded in her ears. Girl, get ready, I'm going to trigger Tianlei. Digression, there's nothing today. It's going to be updated at noon tomorrow. Please browse for a better reading experience from AI Network. Chapter 621. Dark clouds gathered in the sky, and the wind howled. The entire world quickly darkened. The wind stirred the forest, and the leaves rustled. Chu Luiyue stood up, held the sword hilt with both hands, and looked up. Her clothes and black hair fluttered in the wind. Between heaven and earth, she was the most dazzling fiery color. Her gaze was fixed on the rolling black clouds. The next moment, an almost transparent figure appeared in front of her. It was Taizu. He stood in the air with one hand behind his back. Even though it was just a remnant consciousness, it was still graceful and majestic. His gaze swept past Chu Luiyue and finally landed on the cloud sky copper sword, and he nodded with admiration. After nearly a month of polishing, the originally wide and heavy cloud sky copper sword had shrunk by one size. The outer layer of bronze had been completely polished, revealing the peacock blue fetus heart inside. Even under the gloomy sky, it was still deep and pure, glowing faintly. Lass, whether the sword is successfully forged or not depends on this. Chu Liuyue's body tensed up, and she nodded with a grave expression. Taizu, please. The next moment, Taizu took a step forward, and his figure shot toward the sky like an arrow. A powerful pressure suddenly surged out from his body. Above the clouds, countless amounts of heaven and earth energy were crazily gathering. In the blink of an eye, it had already formed a vortex. That vortex began to expand at a speed visible to the naked eye, and it swallowed all the surrounding black clouds. Looking from below, it was as if a huge black eye had suddenly appeared in the sky. Dark, deep, and vast. Chu Liuyue's heart skipped a beat. Taizu was only a remnant consciousness now, and he could actually execute such a remarkable ability. Even a stage 9 warrior might not be able to have such an aura. A trace of doubt quickly flashed across her heart. Did Taizu really fail when he tried to break through back then? However, this thought only flashed across her mind. At this moment, the cloud sky copper sword in her hand suddenly vibrated. Buzz. Chu Luiyue looked down. On the cloud sky copper sword, there seemed to be a dark blue flame that quickly streaked across. As time passed, the sword began to vibrate even more violently. It was as if it was being strongly summoned by some kind of power, as if it was about to escape from her hands. Chu Liuyue clenched his fists and raised his sword high. Her palms were already starting to go numb. Fortunately, after nearly a month of tempering, her physical strength had increased by a lot. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for her to hold this sword. Rumble! A shocking explosion was heard all of a sudden. She looked up. In the sky, a huge black vortex was spinning slowly. And that sound came from within. Amidst the dense blackness, a silver snake-like bolt of lightning was crazily swimming within. Chu Luiwei pursed his lips tightly. The force in his body circulated rapidly, as if it was about to boil. In the next moment, the bolt of lightning struck down from the sky with a shocking aura. It was heading straight for Chu Luiwei. That bolt of lightning seemed to have torn the void apart. Wherever it passed, a black spatial crack was swiftly drawn out. It was as if an invisible hand was forcefully tearing apart this part of the world. Boom! In an instant, that dazzling silver light landed on the cloud sky copper sword. The light was resplendent. Chu Luiwei's figure, along with half of Wang Lin Peak, was almost instantly enveloped by that dazzling light. Chu Luiwei only felt her hands tremble. A terrifying energy instantly flowed from the cloud sky copper sword and into her body. Intense pain instantly spread from her hands to her entire body. All the blood, flesh, tendons, and bones in her body felt as if they were being torn apart at this moment. The smell of something being burned could be heard. Blood blisters even appeared on her skin. Charred black and red intertwined. It was a ghastly sight. Chu Luiwei clenched her teeth tightly and didn't even cry out in pain. Taizu, who was standing in the sky, frowned. When he saw this scene, he also slowly clenched his fists. "You must hold on, bless." Generally speaking, those who dared to trigger the Tianlei and use their own body as a transition to forge a yuan instrument were true top experts. However, the current Chu Luiwei wasn't even a stage 5 warrior. Such an action was actually extremely risky, and the pain that she had to endure was actually far more than others. Whether or not she could endure the first Tianlei would often determine the success or failure of the entire process. As long as she could endure this Suddenly, Taizu's expression changed, and he looked up. In the distance, a youth's figure was rushing over from the direction of Qingyuan Mountain. It was Chang Wanzhou. Chu Luiwei knew 2 days ago that the polishing of the cloud sky copper sword was nearing its end, so she informed Chang Wanzhou in advance that she was going to forge that sword on Wang Lin Peak. And at that time, she had repeatedly warned Chang Wanzhou that no matter what happened, he was not to go near Wang Lin Peak. After she was done with her task, she would naturally return. Therefore, Chu Luiwei had been polishing the sword for a day and a night without sleeping, while Chang Wanzhou on Qingyuan Mountain stood and watched for a day and a night. Originally, everything was fine, but when he saw the Tianlei descending and directly striking Chu Luiwei's body, Chang Wanzhou was shocked and finally couldn't hold back and rushed over. However, Wang Lin Peak was already enveloped by the power of the Tianlei. The violent and terrifying power was crazily strangling, and the surrounding trees were all affected and destroyed. It could be said that it was as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Chang Wanzhou clenched his fists tightly and quickly mobilized the force in his body. Just as he was about to barge in, an invisible barrier suddenly appeared in front of him. At the same time, a low and deep voice entered his ears. "If you don't want to be a burden to her, retreat immediately." Chang Wanzhou frowned and looked up. However, there was a flash of light in front of him, and the wind was blowing wildly. He couldn't see anything, and even the outline of Chu Luiwei's figure was very blurry. He was conflicted, and just as he was about to rush forward without caring about anything, the voice sounded again. "She is forging the sword for you." Chang Wanzhou took half a step forward and stopped abruptly. A look of shock flashed across his eyes. He had heard Chu Luiwei mention this before, but when he saw Chu Luiwei being enveloped by the Tianlei, he didn't think of this at all. At this moment, when he heard this sentence, he suddenly realized that the pain and torture that Chu Luiwei was going through at this moment was all because of him. Guilt, self-blame, pain. It was as if there was an invisible hand tightly clenching his heart, making him almost unable to breathe. "If you come over now, Not only will you not be able to help, you will only make her efforts go to waste. Then all the pain that she is going through will all be in vain. Every word and sentence was like a heavy hammer that smashed into Chang Wanzhou's heart. He clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Finally, he took a step back. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 622. The power of Tianlei rampaged through Chu Liyue's body, almost tearing her internal organs apart. She clenched her teeth, and the thick smell of blood filled her mouth. Her face was pale, and large beads of sweat fell from her forehead. At this moment, one didn't need to look to know that her palm had already festered. There were dark red bloodstains that flowed down her wrist. However, she still held the sword hilt tightly and didn't let go. She endured the terrifying pain and forced herself to hold on. She used her last bit of consciousness to circulate the force in her body. Waves of force surged from her limbs and bones, smoothing out the power of Tianlei that was rampaging crazily bit by bit and gathering it in her hands again. Then, she poured this force back into the cloud sky copper sword. A stream of light flashed across the body of the sparrow blue sword. Following the refinement of this power of Tianlei, the color of the sword body became even richer and purer. A faint light gradually appeared on the cloud sky copper sword. It was as if a star had suddenly lit up in the dark and boundless night sky. When Taizu saw this, a look of admiration flashed across his eyes. She did it. Chu Liyue really did it. She used her physical body to withstand the first power of Tianlei. Boom! Another loud sound reverberated through the clouds. Taizu was shocked and suddenly looked up. He saw that in the dark vortex, the second power of Tianlei was rapidly converging. And it was rapidly descending toward Chu Liyue. How can it be so fast? Seeing this scene, Taizu was so shocked that he lost his voice. Generally speaking, the amount of heavenly lightning that could be summoned to forge a sword was different depending on the forger and the sword. Whether it was 9 or 81, they were all numbers related to 9. One was 9-1 level. He originally thought that with Chu Liyue's current strength and the rare sparrow feather bronze embryo heart in the cloud sky copper sword, she should be able to summon 18 powers of Tianlei, which was 2 levels. But it definitely shouldn't be this fast. Just as Taizu was filled with shock and confusion, the second Tianlei had arrived. It landed heavily on Chu Liyue's body. The dazzling light once again enveloped the surroundings. Among them, a slender and exquisite figure stood proudly like a pine tree. Taizu stared blankly at this scene and murmured in a low voice, "That's right. This is going to be a big deal." Square Ravine. The Great Sect Conference was in full swing. After a series of matches, the Chongshu Pavilion and the Nine-Star Alliance both had their wins and losses. Most of the disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion were Celestial Physician, so they were basically guaranteed to win the competition. However, in terms of martial artists, the Nine-Star Alliance was clearly superior. As for the Shen Masters, both sides' disciples' standards were about the same. Therefore, after the comparison, there was actually no difference between the points of the two sides. The match between the two sides became a tug of war. On the other hand, the matches between the other sects were basically one-sided. To be able to occupy the position of the 4 major sects for so many years was enough to prove the strength of the Dragon Teeth Mountain and the other sections. It was extremely difficult to challenge them. It seemed that only the Nine-Star Alliance had a chance of winning against the Chongshu Pavilion. On the arena, the matches continued. Zhang Hua and the others stood at the side and watched coldly. An old man came to Zhang Hua's side and whispered, "Alliance Master, we're almost tied with the Chongshu Pavilion now. Do you think? When should we send those people up?" Zhang Hua sneered. "What's the hurry? There are only so many people in the Chongshu Pavilion. We can tell at a glance how strong they are. They seem to be barely holding on now, but in fact, they've been going all out from the beginning. In the second half of the match, they will definitely be unable to continue. When the time comes, we'll make a move and completely crush them. Let the Chongshu Pavilion think that they still have hope first, and then we'll give them a head-on blow at the end. Only then would they be able to win happily. When the old man heard this, his face was filled with excitement. Alliance Master is wise. The more badly the Chongshu Pavilion lost in the end, the harder it would be for them to make a comeback in the future. Zhang Hua placed his hands behind his back, his expression cold and mocking. After today, there will be no place for the Chongshu Pavilion in Xiling City. Yanlin Peak. Dark clouds covered the sky and covered the sun. The huge black vortex in the middle was spinning slowly. Below it, light flickered on Yanlin Peak, and violent energy spread wildly in all directions. More than half of the forest on the mountain had been destroyed, and it looked terrifying. And in the middle of that ball of light, Chu Luiyue was enduring intense pain and torture. She gathered the power of Tianlei again and poured it into the cloud sky copper sword. After the first successful experience, it was easier to do it again. But this didn't mean that her pain had lessened. On the contrary, every layer of torture on her body was stacking with the descent of Tianlei. Before the old injuries healed, new ones were added. There was almost no part of Chu Luiyue's body that was unscathed. Burn scars were all over her body. Not to mention the internal injuries caused by the violent energy of the heavenly Tao rampaging through his body. Her hands and arms were already bleeding from the inside out. These wounds didn't look big, but they were extremely deep and densely packed. They looked extremely terrifying. Her clothes were already soaked in blood, and even the sword hilt was stained with her blood. But she still held the cloud sky copper sword tightly, and she kept pouring the power of Tianlei into it. Another streak of silver light streaked across the sky. It was refined again. Gradually, more and more stars appeared on the dull and pure sword body, and it became brighter and brighter. The aura around her was also strengthening continuously. Chu Luiyue licked her lips, and the sweet and fishy smell filled her nose, but it made her battle intent even stronger. She looked up. The third Tianlei had already gathered in that extremely dark vortex. Again, she let out a clear shout. At the same time, she raised the cloud sky copper sword in her hand even higher. Taizu, who was standing not far away, only felt that his heart was being clenched tightly. If he had won. Is this girl crazy? Tianlei came down, and she was already seriously injured, but not only was she not afraid, she even seemed to be more excited. Is she not afraid of pain or death? Such a scene made him tremble with fear. And what he was most worried about was that this was just the beginning. According to the speed at which the Tianlei was falling, Chu Luiyue still had a long way to go. Just at this moment, as if it had heard her voice, the third Ti came down rapidly. Boom! Chu Luiyue's figure was swallowed by endless power again. If she knew what Taizu was thinking at this moment, she would tell him. Chu Luiyue was not afraid of pain, and she was not afraid of death. Today, this cloud sky copper sword, she was going to forge it. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 623. The force in Chu Luiyue's body and the force of Tianlei fought fiercely and tore each other apart. Every inch of her flesh and bones was being tempered again and again. Along with the unforgettable pain, her physical body's endurance was also gradually increasing. As if she couldn't feel the pain, she stood there with her back straight and received the descending Tianlei. The third Tianlei. The fourth Tianlei. The fifth Tianlei. The ninth Tianlei. On the cloud sky copper sword, there were specks of starlight, almost like a galaxy in the night sky. It was dazzling. Pure and clean sparrow blue flames burned quietly on it, almost fusing with the sword. The flames were scorching hot, and the stars were cold. The two extreme forces intertwined with each other, forming an astonishing pressure. A bright lightning-like pattern appeared on the sword hilt. Little girl, this rune contains the power of 9 bolts of heavenly thunder. Taizu's voice could not hide his excitement. Although he was very confident in Chu Luiyue before, he was still pleasantly surprised when he saw this scene. He had not misjudged her. Chu Luiyue had unimaginable perseverance and endurance. With such a temperament, coupled with her astonishing talent and mysterious trump card, her future was limitless. When Chu Luiwei heard that, the corners of her mouth slowly curled into a gratified smile. The torture that she had experienced previously seemed to have become insignificant at this moment. As long as she could succeed, boom! Another loud sound reverberated in his ears. Chu Luiwei looked up in shock, only to see that the dark clouds in the sky had not dissipated. And in the black vortex, another Tianlei had appeared. What is that? Chu Luiwei widened her eyes slightly. Taizu coughed. Oh, that? The 10th Tianlei. Chu Luiwei. Didn't you say that there were 9? Ahem, girl, what I said before was at least 9. Chu Luiwei was stunned and thought carefully. It really is. She had just survived the 9 Tianlei and was so excited that she had forgotten about it. Looking at the silver lightning that was obviously much thicker than before, Chu Luiwei felt his throat go dry. Taizu, does this mean that I still have to endure 9 more Tianlei? Taizu put his hands behind his back and looked up at the sky, trying not to let Chu Luiwei see the guilt on his face. This should be. The corners of Chu Luiwei's eyes twitched. She didn't know if it was her imagination, but she felt that there was something wrong with Taizu, but she couldn't tell what was wrong. Before she could think too much, the 10th Tianlei had already descended. Chu Luiwei spread his legs apart and bent his knees slightly as he gripped the cloud sky copper sword in his hands tightly. The next moment, a dazzling light instantly obscured her vision. A power that was even more violent than the previous 9 Tianlei spread down along the cloud sky copper sword and entered her body in an instant. Countless bloody wounds instantly appeared on Chu Luiwei's body. Blood splattered everywhere. In an instant she was completely covered in blood. This time, she finally couldn't hold it in and let out a short and suppressed groan. When Taizu heard that, he was worried and hurriedly looked over. When he saw Chu Luiwei covered in blood and injuries, his expression instantly froze. After passing the previous 9 Tianlei, the power of the 10th Tianlei was indeed much stronger than before. Girl, for some reason, when he saw Chu Luiwei in such a state, he felt extremely uncomfortable. It was as if there was something heavy pressing on his heart, or as if there were dense needles constantly stabbing him. He couldn't explain where this feeling came from, but it went deep into his bones and couldn't be shaken off. For a moment, he actually hoped that he could take Chu Luiwei's place and bear this pain. Taizu closed his eyes and frowned. He knew very well what would happen if he triggered the Tianlei to forge the sword. After all, the Long Yuan sword was personally forged by him. Therefore, he had already expected this scene, especially when he sensed that the speed of the second Tianlei had far exceeded his previous estimation. He was even more clear about how things would develop. According to his understanding of Chu Luiwei, she could actually survive this round. However, when this scene appeared before his eyes, he realized that he couldn't bear to see Chu Luiwei suffer this torture. He suppressed the surging emotions in his heart and controlled himself to stand on the spot and not make a move. Once he made a move, it would mean that this process would be interrupted. Just like what he had said to Chang Wanzhou before, Chu Luiwei's efforts would all be in vain, and the torture she suffered would be meaningless. Taizu fell into deep thought as he watched. He had been decisive all his life, and it was rare for him to feel such heartache. Could it be that it was because he had spent a lot of time with Chu Luiwei during this period of time that he felt this way? Or could it be because of the Long Yuan sword? Actually, he had already had this feeling before. There seemed to be a subtle connection and familiarity between Chu Luiwei and him. This was also one of the reasons why he was especially close to Chu Luiwei. At first, he thought that the Long Yuan sword had recognized Chu Luiwei as its new master. But now, it seemed that wasn't the case. On the other side, Chang Wanzhou was also looking over. When the light flowed back and forth, he finally caught a glimpse of Chu Luiwei's figure. His pupils suddenly constricted. Chu Luiwei's body was covered in wounds. It was a shocking sight. Because she was wearing red clothes, it was not easy to see the bloodstains. But at this moment, the clothes on her body were almost sticking tightly to her body, and blood kept dripping from the corner of her clothes. It was not hard to imagine how much blood she had lost. Chang Wanzhou's chest rose and fell violently, and the blood in his body was almost frozen. However, his force was surging wildly. His beautiful eyes were already scarlet red. Even he himself did not know what kind of strength he was relying on to restrain his impulse to rush forward. A sentence kept echoing in his mind. She did all this and experienced all this for him. Bang! Vaguely, somewhere deep in his body, something seemed to have suddenly shattered. At this moment, Chu Liwei naturally did not know about the situation between Taizu and Chang Wanzhou. In her eyes and heart, there was only the cloud sky copper sword in her hand. She kept organizing and gathering the power of the 10th Tianlei in her body, and continued to temper the sword in her hand. The flames on the sword burned even more fiercely, and those stars seemed to be even brighter. The 10th Tianlei. She had finally succeeded in enduring it. Then, it was the 11th Tianlei. Boom! An extremely ferocious power suddenly descended. Chu Liyue's body finally could not hold on any longer, and she knelt down with a plop. Her knee smashed heavily on the star stone, and there was a dull thud. Why haven't these dark clouds dispersed yet? A trace of awkwardness flashed across Taizu's face. This is because this sword is not completely completed. Chu Liyue was stunned. What? Taizu braced himself and said, there's still. Before he finished speaking, a roar suddenly sounded. Boom! The corner of Chu Liyue's eyes twitched violently. To be honest, this sound, she was tired of hearing it. First, it was 9. Then it was 18. Until now, there was still more? Why was there no end to it? She turned her gaze slightly and saw a silver bolt of lightning appear in the clouds again. Without a doubt, this was a level stronger than the previous ones. If this Tianlei fell on her body, Chu Liyue was really not sure if she could withstand it. While she was thinking, the 19th Tianlei had already struck down. Chu Liyue gritted her teeth. She was going to fight. Taizu was originally worried, but he didn't expect to see Chu Liyue suddenly rush toward the Tianlei. What is she doing? Taizu was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Then, under his shocked gaze, Chu Liyue jumped up and raised her sword. She actually chose to meet the 19th Tianlei head-on. Boom! The Tianlei landed on the sword, and there was a bright light. Chu Liyue's figure was once again swallowed by the dazzling light. Liyu! Taizu exclaimed. Silver light flashed, and thunder rumbled. Chu Liyue didn't move from the ball of light for a long time. Taizu was extremely worried and finally decided to make a move. Compared to the sword, Chu Liyue's life was obviously more important. However, he had just taken a step when he sensed a terrifying aura spreading out from the dazzling ball of light. He paused in his actions. Then, a crimson flame suddenly gushed out of it. The red flame was like an extremely sharp knife, and it instantly cut the ball of light into two. A figure suddenly appeared. It was Chu Liyue. At this moment, she was surrounded by red flames, and her red clothes and black hair were fluttering. She held the cloud sky copper sword with both hands, and her black jade-like eyes were burning with a biting cold fighting spirit. Vigorous and berserk origin power revolved wildly around her body. Her aura was astonishing. Under the dark sky, she was the only color. Taizu's heart shook violently. How did she suddenly become so strong? Before he could figure it out, he saw Chu Liyue slowly raise her sword. At this moment, countless streams of light scattered in all directions, as if they were trying to escape. Chu Liyue's eyes were cold, and a cold smile appeared at the corner of her lips. Trying to run? It's not that easy. Then, the long sword fell heavily. Red flames swept out in all directions. It instantly swallowed the escaping streams of light. Taizu was dumbfounded. Chu Liyue killed Tianlei's power. Digression, I'm going to eat, and I'll leave at 6 p.m. I won't say that I still have a few updates today. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Wang. Chapter 625. He had lived for so many years and had seen people being struck to death by Tianlei. He had also seen people being blasted half to death by Tianlei. He had also seen people who were evenly matched with Tianlei and successfully passed through it. However, he had never seen anyone going head-to-head with Tianlei and even chasing after it. Wasn't this a little wrong? Wasn't that girl just now being beaten by those Tianlei to the point where she couldn't retaliate and was even about to admit defeat? How did the situation take a 180-degree turn in the blink of an eye? The great ancestor fell into deep confusion as he watched the power of the heavenly thunder being devoured by the crimson flames without hesitation. He took a step forward, but he didn't know whether to step back or forward. Could it be, did he see wrongly? However, Chu Luiwei was covered in blood and couldn't be mistaken. He could even clearly see the countless hideous wounds on her arms from here. She was indeed about to die just now, or perhaps he was too ignorant and didn't know that there was such a way to deal with Tianlei in this world? While Taizu was still in a daze, Chu Luiwei had already collected all the power of the 19th Tianlei and poured it all into the cloud sky copper sword. Seeing a silver light flowing across the sword, Chu Luiwei slowly wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth. Based on her current cultivation level, it was indeed very difficult for her to withstand the power of the heavenly lightning. However, she didn't only have this bit of strength. With a thought, she mobilized the power within the water droplet and turned the surging force into flames. She wrapped the cloud sky copper sword and completely split that Tianlei power apart. The entire process was smooth and extremely carefree. She had thought it through very clearly. If the enemy was strong, she would be weak. If the enemy was weak, she would be strong. In any case, this heavenly lightning wouldn't stop for a while, so he might as well fight it. Originally, she only wanted to make a Hail Mary effort, but she didn't expect the effect to far exceed her expectations. This Tianlei seemed to have a trace of inexplicable fear towards her. To be precise, he was afraid of the water droplet in her body. She only wanted to absorb the power of Tianlei, but she didn't expect the Tianlei to run away as soon as she started to move. Since you're already here, why are you running? Chu Luiwei made a prompt decision and immediately used all his strength to kill him. As a result, the power of Tianlei became incomparably obedient. It didn't even dare to wreak havoc in her body. This undoubtedly greatly reduced the pain Chu Luiwei's entire body. A gentle yet powerful force gushed out from the water droplet and quickly spread to Chu Luiwei's limbs and bones. The injuries in her body began to heal quickly. Even the external wounds on her body began to scab rapidly under the envelopment of the scarlet flames. Moreover, there was a lot of Tianlei's power left in her flesh and bones. If she could completely digest it and convert it into her own power, it would be an extremely vast energy. Chu Luiwei felt the changes in his body and let out a long sigh. Fortunately, I have this trump card, otherwise, I might not be able to last long under the encirclement of Tianlei. After confirming that the 19th Tianlei had finished refining the cloud sky copper sword and that his body was improving, Chu Luiwei raised his head to look again. In the sky, a silver snake-like bolt of lightning was swimming through the layers of dark clouds. That was the 20th Tianlei. Chu Luiwei landed back on the star stone. She spread her legs and held the sword in her hand tightly. She stared at it and held her breath. However, after waiting for a long time, the Tianlei still didn't fall. Chu Luiwei couldn't help but look at Taizu. Taizu, didn't you say that 9 Tianlei would appear together every time? This one appeared just now. Why hasn't it come down yet? Taizu looked at the Tianlei that was constantly wandering in the clouds and frowned. Probably, it'll be done in a while. Since the 19th one has already come down, there's no reason for the rest to not appear, right? Besides, the 20th one has already been condensed. A while passed. Another while passed. The surroundings gradually quietened down. Chu Luiwei raised his eyebrows. Taizu, it's been a long time. Why isn't it moving? Taizu crossed his arms and supported his chin with one hand. He fell into a strange silence. He had a vague guess in his heart. However, that was too ridiculous, so he quickly suppressed it the moment it appeared in his mind. However, the more he looked at it, the more he felt that something was amiss. this? Actually, I've never encountered such a situation before. Chu Luiyue moved his wrist. If I wait any longer, my injuries will be healed. Taizu was speechless. He looked at the bright silver lightning again. It looks fine, so why isn't it coming down? What's the point of it swaying there? He had never thought that there would be a day when he would actually yearn for a Tianlei to fall so much. In this extremely strange atmosphere, Chu Luiyue waited for a while more before finally feeling a little impatient. The next moment, she suddenly raised her chi, stepped on the star stone, and leaped up. At the same time, she held the cloud sky copper sword tightly in her hand. Wherever the sword passed, a straight black spatial crack was left in the void. The force around Chu Luiyue surged, and the red flames exploded again. It enveloped the entire cloud sky copper sword. The raging flames instantly caused the surrounding temperature to rise. The Tianlei in the clouds seemed to have sensed this dangerous aura and suddenly increased its swimming speed. From afar, it seemed to be a little anxious. Taizu was even more puzzled. Things seemed to be developing in a strange direction. Right at this moment, Chu Luiyue raised her sword. A vast aura surged out from the sword. Taizu was shocked. The power in Chu Luiyue's body and the sword seemed to have become stronger than before. A crimson flame flew out instantly and spread towards the sky. The Tianlei in the clouds sensed danger, and after a short pause, it actually dived into the depths of the black vortex. Taizu's eyes twitched. This Tianlei is actually planning to escape. That red flame suddenly increased its speed and chased after the Tianlei. Almost at the same time, a clear shout instantly spread between heaven and earth. Get down here. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 626. That scarlet flame flew up like a long whip and instantly wrapped tightly around that Tianlei. Following Chu Luiyue's clear shout, it was instantly dragged down ruthlessly. At the same time, Chu Luiyue rushed up once again. The sword fell. Whoosh! That Tianlei was actually split apart from the middle by Chu Luiyue's cloud sky copper sword. Then, endless flames once again wrapped it up and passed through the sword before finally surging into Chu Luiyue's body. Chu Luiyue quickly gathered the power of Tianlei and poured it all into the cloud sky copper sword. Go in! A stream of light instantly streaked across the sword. The 20th Tianlei. The tempering was complete. The expression on Taizu's face became very interesting. How is this triggering Tianlei to forge the sword? This is forcefully grabbing Tianlei back and rubbing it against the sword. Seeing Chu Luiyue finish all of this in a rough and clean manner with her face and body covered in blood, Shangguan Jing held his head. What happened to the outside world in the past 1,000 years? He knew that Chu Luiyue was very powerful, but that was Tianlei. She just took care of it like that? Lu Yu, Taizu opened his mouth with difficulty, but he didn't know what to say. Could it be that he should persuade Chu Luiyue not to be so cruel to Tianlei? Taizu? What's wrong? When Chu Luiyue heard that, she turned around to look. Although she was covered in blood, her eyes were firm and bright, and she looked very energetic. It was completely different from the way she looked when she was on the verge of death and being beaten up. Taizu thought for a while before saying, This Tianlei. This heavenly lightning. It doesn't seem to be like this, Chu Luiyue blinked his eyes and raised the cloud sky copper sword in his hand to take a closer look. The blade of the sword was smooth and flat, tough and sharp. After being tempered, its color had become even richer and purer. Against the faint glow on its surface, it looked like a huge blue gem. There doesn't seem to be any problems. Isn't this pretty good? Confusion surfaced in Chu Luiyue's eyes as she looked at her ancestor. What do you mean? Taizu. Pretend I didn't say anything. Kids nowadays are too fierce. Chu Luiyue looked up. The thick clouds had yet to dissipate, and the vortex was still spinning slowly just like before. But it was completely dark, and not a single ray of silver light could be seen. There was no Tianlei? Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment, then asked, Taizu, look, although the clouds haven't dispersed, Tianlei still hasn't arrived. What's going on? Taizu looked at her coldly. You still have the cheek to ask? You're the one who scared the remaining Tianlei to the point that it can't move. Who's to blame? In the past, he had been staying in the Tianling god realm. In the end, he met Chu Luiyue, so he followed Chu Luiyue out with hope and joy. He originally wanted to come out to see the sun and admire the world's scenery. Who knew that he would be involved in such a thing? His belief in refining yuan instruments for so many years had been shattered by Chu Luiyue. He had yet to recover from it. Who could he reason with? Chu Luiyue felt guilty from his gaze and touched his nose. It can't be because of me, right? The great ancestor snorted. Then it's because of me? Chu Luiyue. She quietly returned to the star stone and sat cross-legged, placing the cloud sky copper sword on her knees. Then I'll wait a little longer. Taizu raised his head to take a look. The remaining Tianlei were actually there, but they refused to come down. They were probably even more conflicted than he was now. He couldn't leave. Come down. There was still Chu Luiyue there. Taizu was at a loss. What exactly did this girl do just now? On Qingyuan Mountain. When Chang Wanzhou saw Chu Luiyue walk out of that ball of red flames, he was shocked. He stood rooted to the ground and couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. Everything that happened after that was beyond his imagination. He almost started to doubt his eyes. When Chu Luiyue dealt with the Tianlei and sat back down on the star stone, he finally felt relieved. Although he didn't know what exactly happened, he could tell that Chu Luiyue had turned the tables around. She had turned from the disadvantaged party to the advantageous party. Even though she was covered in blood, she didn't look like she was in a sorry state. At this moment, there was only one word that could be seen on her: powerful. Chang Wanzhou's clenched fists finally loosened. Because he used too much force, his palms were completely numb and he couldn't feel them. But he didn't care. His eyes were fixed on the slender and straight figure. She really had a way. No matter what kind of predicament she was in, she could always find a way out. Just like the person in his memory. It was the same. That person always had a smile on her face, as if she didn't care about anything. She seemed to be able to easily solve any problem that came into her hands. He slowly placed his right hand on his left chest. His heart that was beating violently had slowly calmed down. But something seemed to have stayed. His eyes gradually became firm, persistent, and a trace of deep devotion. The mountaintop of Yanlin Peak became very quiet. A gentle breeze blew, sweeping up the broken branches and withered leaves. There was an inexplicable sense of desolation. Chu Luiyue circulated the force in her body. It was like a river washing through the riverbed, carrying sand and waves with it. The Tianlei power stored in Chu Luiyue's body was gradually absorbed into the water droplet and transformed into Chu Luiyue's own power. With the nourishment of the power in the water droplet, Chu Luiyue's injuries quickly recovered. After circulating the force for one cycle, Chu Luiyue opened her eyes again. The aura on her body was clearly stronger than before. She actually had a faint feeling of breaking through. Chu Luiyue moved her neck and stood up with her sword. Many of the bloodstains on her clothes had already dried, becoming rough and hard. It was very uncomfortable to wear. In addition, there were many wounds on her body that had just scabbed over. The thick smell of blood filled her nose. Every time she moved, she felt even more uncomfortable. Chu Luiyue gradually became frustrated. She had no problem polishing the cloud sky copper sword for a month. She had no problem forcefully accepting the Tianlei power with her current realm and enduring endless pain. However, the key was that she had already waited here for so long, but this Tianlei did not move at all. It did not even have the slightest intention of appearing. What was this? When she thought of this, Chu Luiyue's expression turned cold. She looked up at the sky. With a flick of her wrist, she raised her sword and pointed it straight at the sky. Her voice was extremely cold and carried a trace of impatience as she said slowly, "You're right," she said in an impatient tone. "Do you want to come down yourself, or do you want me to go up? I'm in a hurry." As soon as she finished speaking, the world was silent. There were no ripples. Chu Luiyue suddenly sneered. If that's the case, rumble. A bolt of heavenly thunder finally gathered in the clouds. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 627. Taizu was dumbfounded. How could she do that? Wasn't this girl a little too strong? Who would curse Tianlei down like that? However, the 21st Tianlei really appeared just like that. And after it appeared, it didn't stop at all and quickly slashed down. Chu Luiyue stood up and raised the sword in her hand. The flames on the sword burned wildly. The sword intent was awe-inspiring. In the next instant, Chu Luiyue leaped and collided with the Tianlei. Boom! Accompanied by a loud bang, silver lights splashed everywhere, and the violent energy spread wildly in all directions. The exact same scene as before played out once again. Chu Luiyue didn't spend any effort and successfully dealt with the Tianlei. When the silver light quickly flowed past the cloud sky copper sword, another Tianlei quickly appeared in the sky. Chu Luiyue looked up and curled her lips. Wouldn't it have been better if you had done this earlier? The earlier it appeared, the earlier it was dealt with. Taizu, he started to feel that his initial worry was a little unnecessary. No, it was very unnecessary. Square Ravine. More than half of the competition time had passed, and it had completely entered the white-hot stage. The competition in all 4 arenas was going on very intensely. However, at the Chongshu Pavilion and the 9-Star Alliance's side, it could be said to be tragic. Bam! In the martial artist arena, a figure flew out and landed heavily on the ground with a dull thud. Martial Artist Round 6, 9-Star Alliance's Pei Sang wins. The loud voice instantly spread. The spectators all had different expressions. After a short silence, they began to discuss in low voices. The 9-Star Alliance actually won this round again. Including this round, they actually won a total of 5 out of the 6 rounds. The 9-Star Alliance's disciples are actually so strong. According to this trend, I'm afraid the Chongshu Pavilion won't be able to hold on. I thought they could hold on for a while in the Celestial Physician competition, but out of the 7 rounds, they won 3, lost 2, and drew 2. It's really not considered much of an advantage. Not only that, they seem to be the ones who lost more in the Xian Master competition, right? Now that I think about it, the Chongshu Pavilion is already lagging behind the 9-Star Alliance by quite a bit. If they want to make a comeback, they have to win the remaining rounds. Everyone was discussing. Jiao-Xing Alliance's morale was high, and their faces were more or less filled with pride. Alliance Master, what you said before. Once those few people went up, Chong-Su Cabinet immediately lost the ability to retaliate and could only let us do whatever we wanted. Based on the current situation, victory is already in our grasp. Hearing this, Zhang Hua snorted. Isn't that normal? Chong-Su Cabinet is strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Even if they don't use those, they won't be our match. The 9-Star Alliance is definitely going to be one of the 4 major sects today. Alliance Master is wise. On the other side, 2 disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion quickly went forward and helped that person back. Yi Ran went forward nervously. Senior Brother Lu, how are you? So the person who participated in this competition was Lu Jiao. Lu Jiao looked up and forced a smile. I'm fine. I just lost to the 9-Star Alliance. I'm sorry, everyone. His face was extremely pale, and the corners of his mouth and chest were stained with blood. It was obvious that his injuries were not light. This weak smile made him look even more weak and sad. Yuchi Song said in a low voice, "That person is not weak, and his methods are sinister. You can't be blamed for losing. You don't have to blame yourself." Lu Jiao pursed his lips. A hint of guilt flashed across his eyes as he lowered his head. Although the pavilion master said so, he couldn't forgive himself. In the first 5 martial artist competitions, they had only won one. The situation was critical, and they really needed his victory. In the end, after a bitter battle, they still lost. This undoubtedly made their already lagging situation even worse. He pondered for a moment, then returned to Yuchi-sang's side and said hesitantly, "Pavilion Master, I keep feeling that there's something wrong with them." Yuchi-sang's eyes flickered. Actually, he could tell as well. He had seen the disciples of the Nine-Star Alliance who participated in the martial artist competition before. During the previous Great Sect meeting, these people's strength was only average. But now, in less than a year, they had all improved a lot. With their talent, it was impossible for them to have such cultivation speed in the past. After watching a few matches, he had already started to suspect that there was a problem. "Have you found any evidence?" Lu Xiao shook his head regretfully. Yuchi-sang sighed in his heart and patted his shoulder. "It's fine. Go and rest first. There are still a few more matches. No one knows the outcome until the last moment." Lu Xiao knew that it was useless to say anything more, so he could only retreat and rest. When he walked to Yi Ranran's side, he said firmly, "Ranran, you'll participate in the Celestial Physician competition later. You must win." Yi Ranran clenched his fists and nodded seriously. "The person I'm going against is the man who made fun of me that day. I must teach him a lesson today." She still remembered the humiliation from that day. Lu Xiao patted her head. "It's up to you." Yi Ranran was participating in the 8th round of the Celestial Physician competition. Seeing that the Chongshu Pavilion had actually sent out a round-faced girl who looked like she was in her teens, everyone was stunned. "We're already at this stage. Shouldn't Chongsu Cabinet send out their strongest person? Why did they randomly find someone? Is there really no one else in the Chongshu Pavilion? They actually sent you?" Opposite him, a man in blue crossed his arms and sized up Yi Ranran with disdain. "Could it be that you haven't been bullied enough at Thousand View Garden that day, so you specially came here?" Probably because they felt that the Nine-Star Alliance's victory was certain, even their disciples spoke very impolitely. Their words and actions were very presumptuous. Yi Ranran was not angry. He only took out his medicine cauldron and said word by word, "I'm enough to deal with you. Why do you need to invite senior brothers and sisters?" The man in blue's expression changed. A woman beside the arena suddenly sneered. "I'm afraid that your senior brothers and sisters can't help them anymore. That's why they sent you, right?" Yi Ranran turned to take a look. It was the woman who had forcefully taken her position that day. She stared at her for a while. Her lips moved slightly as she coldly spat out a few words. "Why do you have so much self-righteous nonsense when you don't even have the right to go on stage?" The woman choked, and her face quickly turned into the color of pig liver. After not seeing her for a while, this little girl had become sharp-tongued. Unfortunately, no matter how good she was at talking, it could not change the fact that they were going to lose. The man in blue said impatiently, "In that case, cut the crap. Let's see who's the real deal." Below the stage, Lu Xiao looked around and could not help but mutter, "Why aren't junior sister and junior brother here yet?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 628. Next up was the 7th Battle of the Warriors. The Nine-Star Alliance sent out an early-stage Stage 6 disciple. Everyone on Chongsu Cabinet's side had solemn expressions. Because there was only one Stage 6 warrior among them who hadn't fought yet. And it was only the early stage. If the Nine-Star Alliance sent out any more Stage 6 warriors, it would be extremely disadvantageous for them. Yuchi-song thought for a moment and decided to send the remaining Stage 6 warrior up. Zhang Hua glanced at him and said slowly, "Old Song, this seems to be the last Stage 6 warrior in the Chongshu Pavilion. You really don't have anyone else to send out for the remaining 2 battles, right?" Yuchi-song's expression didn't change. "I don't need others to worry about my Chongshu Pavilion." Zhang Hua wasn't annoyed and only sneered in disdain. In his opinion, the Chongshu Pavilion was just stubbornly resisting. The outcome of the competition was basically set. No matter what they did, it was useless. The Nine-Star Alliance just had to wait to win. Why would they care about what Yuchi-song said? Yuchi-song put his hands behind his back and gradually clenched his fists. "All right, Isn't little junior brother also a stage 6 warrior? If only he was here. Yeah, maybe if he's here, we can win. Actually, it's not bad for little junior sister to come. If she didn't have a certain level of strength, she wouldn't have been able to get first place in the Wanzheng competition. She's even better than little junior brother. But those two are still nowhere to be seen. They probably won't come, right? The disciples in the Chongshu Pavilion were anxious. If they really lost to the 9-Star Alliance in the end, their situation in Shilling City would definitely become worse. However, the only thing they could do now was to wait. The waiting time seemed to be particularly unbearable. Everyone in Chongsu Cabinet focused their gazes on the arena. The battle between Yi Ranran and the man in blue attracted a lot of attention from the beginning, because this was the second last match of the Celestial Physician competition. At this point in time, the outcome of any match had become extremely important. Yi Ranran's round face was calm and serious. She placed her hand on top of the medicinal cauldron, and a ball of white flame instantly rose up. The surrounding temperature instantly dropped by quite a bit. A chilling aura gushed out from the white flames. The face of the blue-clothed man standing opposite her changed. This flame, pure ice fire? No wonder this little girl was so confident. It was because she had such a trump card. It was rumored that the ice pure fire came from the bottom of an ice pond. It was different from ordinary flames. It was completely white and contained an extremely deep chill. However, the chill itself was extremely pure and was very helpful in refining medicine. Generally speaking, the pills refined by a celestial physician who possessed the ice fire would definitely be more effective than the pills refined by a celestial physician of the same level. There were even some that could directly upgrade ordinary medicinal pills by an entire grade. A trace of nervousness arose in his heart, but he concealed it very well on his face. He retracted his gaze, turned his force into a fire, and began to prepare to refine medicine. Yi Ranran methodically placed the medicinal herbs that she had prepared beforehand into the cauldron one by one. The flames in the entire medicinal cauldron were clearly divided into several regions, and the medicine was refined at different temperatures. Seeing this scene, many people were secretly amazed. Yi Ranran looked young, but they did not expect her to be so skilled in refining medicine. From her series of operations, she was indeed very talented in celestial physician. The blue-clothed man opposite her inadvertently raised his head to take a look, and his expression froze. He could clearly see that there were a total of 4 different regions in Yi Ranran's medicinal cauldron. She could actually control so many at the same time. One had to know that he had been diligently cultivating for many years, but until now, he could only control 3 regions at the same time. He paused for a moment, but still braced himself and made his move. Sure enough, after seeing the situation on his side, the surrounding people quickly began to discuss in low voices. I didn't expect that Yi Ranran's talent and strength to be so amazing. I think she might really win this time. Isn't that so? Look at that technique, that proficiency. It's obvious that Yi Ranran is better. Yi Ranran seems to be almost 10 years younger than that man. In the end, that man's strength is actually inferior to Yi Ranran's. Indeed, they can't be compared. Chongshu Pavilion sent her, so they should win this round. All kinds of discussions poured into the blue-clothed man's ears one after another, and it made him extremely frustrated. It was inevitable that his bad mood would affect his concentration. Not long after, he wasted a medicinal herb because he was distracted. This made him even more flustered. On the other hand, Yi Ranran's eyes were fixed on her medicinal cauldron from beginning to end. Every movement was smooth and practiced. The winner was obvious. The 9-Star Alliance's people also restrained their arrogant expressions because of this match. Yi Ranran's match went very smoothly. However, the martial artists' match next to them made the people in Chongshu Pavilion nervous. Both of them were at the same level at the early stage of Stage 6, so it was difficult to determine the winner. They went back and forth, killing each other, and then they completely fell into a stalemate. The noise around them gradually quieted down. In the end, after nearly an hour of dueling, the seventh martial artists match between the two sides ended in a draw. This result was neither good nor bad, but it didn't mean much to the Chongshu Pavilion at the moment. There was still a big gap between them and the 9-star alliance. A draw was definitely not enough. Only victory would give them a chance to turn things around. However, there weren't many matches left. If they lost again, it would really be irreversible. Fortunately, not long after, Yi Ranran's match finally ended. She had refined a pill that was a full level higher than her opponent's. It was a complete victory. Hearing the announcement of her victory, Yi Ranran finally heaved a sigh of relief. She put away her pills and medicine cauldron, then rushed to Wei Qi's song and the others. Her round little face was flushed red with excitement, and her eyes were filled with excitement. "Pavilion Master, I didn't let you down." Yu Qi's song nodded in relief. "You did well. Thank you for your hard work." A cold sneer was suddenly heard. "Old song, don't tell me you still haven't realized that you have no chance of winning?" Zhang Hua touched his chin and smiled sarcastically. "Including Yi Ranran's win, you're still 3 points behind us. However, there are only 4 matches left. Unless you win all 4 matches, otherwise, you definitely won't be able to maintain your position as one of the 4 major sections." His gaze slowly swept across the people in Chongshu Pavilion. "In my opinion, why don't you admit defeat now? This way, you won't have to add a few more injured people to your team. TSK, there aren't many disciples in Chongshu Pavilion to begin with. If you accidentally lose a few more, I'm afraid there won't be anyone left in the entire Chongshu Pavilion, right?" Everyone's expressions were filled with anger. This was going too far. At this moment, a clear and powerful voice suddenly sounded from afar. "Who said that there's no one left in Chongshu Pavilion? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from LoveNet." Chapter 629. Everyone looked up. 2 figures were flying over on their swords against the wind. The person in front was dressed in black. Her black hair fluttered in the wind, and there was a casual smile on her beautiful face. It was Chu Luiyue. Behind her was a tall and thin youth in gray linen clothes. His skin was so fair that it seemed to be translucent. His facial features were unbelievably exquisite and beautiful. His soft golden hair fluttered in the wind. Although his expression was cold, there was still the youthfulness and vitality of a youth between his brows. This was Chang Wanzhou. Under their feet, they were stepping on a long sword that emitted a faint light like the Milky Way that stretched across the night sky. Wherever they passed, black spatial rifts were silently left behind. Their auras were astonishing. The 2 of them were dressed extremely ordinarily, but they still could not hide their outstanding appearance and temperament. The moment they appeared, they instantly attracted countless gazes. Yu Qi's song heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. A smile appeared on his old face. The many disciples of Chongshu Pavilion were also filled with joy. Lu Xiao jumped up excitedly and waved at the 2 of them. "Little junior sister. Little junior brother. We're here. Ouch, it hurts." Because he was too excited, he pulled at his wound again and grimaced in pain. Yi Ranran hurriedly supported him. "Senior brother Lu, be careful." It's fine. I'm relieved that the 2 of them are here. What's this small injury?" Lu Xiao said with a careless grin. For some reason, the moment he saw Chu Luiyue, his restless heart seemed to be instantly calmed. She seemed to have an invisible force that could always make people believe her unconditionally. As long as she was around, there was nothing to worry about. Yi Ranran could not help but purse his lips and smile. "That's right. The 2 of them are here. We'll definitely win." Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou landed. The crowd automatically opened up a path for him. The duo walked straight to where Chong Su Cabinet's people were. "Master!" Chu Luiyue and Lu Xiao bowed one after another. "Are we late?" "You're not late, you're just in time." As Wei Qi's song spoke, his expression suddenly changed. He quickly scanned Chu Luiyue from head to toe, and his brows knitted tightly together. "Luyu, what's wrong with you? Why are there so many wounds?" Chu Luiyue's hands were full of scars. And from the looks of it, it had just appeared. Her body reeked of blood. Chu Luiyue smiled. Master, it's a long story. I'll tell you the details later. But you don't have to worry, these are all superficial wounds, and they're almost healed. Before she came, she specially took a bath, applied medicine on the wounds on her body, and changed into a clean set of clothes. Unexpectedly, Yuchi Song was able to tell that something was wrong. Actually, her internal injuries were no longer a problem. Only the remaining wounds on her body had not completely healed. Although they had already scabbed over, they still looked quite shocking. Fortunately, she had specially changed into this black robe, which was able to cover most of the wounds. Otherwise, she would not know how to explain it if others saw it. Yuchi Song was skeptical, but he was still worried. Chu Luiyue had said that he had something to do, so he stayed on Yanlin Peak for a while. But it had only been half a day. How did he suddenly have so many wounds? I was wondering who it was that was so arrogant. When Zhang Hua saw Chu Luiyue and Lu Jiao appear, he could not help but mock. So it's the two famous new disciples of Chongshu Pavilion. I thought you were too timid to come. But it doesn't seem to be meaningful to come at the last moment. There were still 4 matches left. Even with Chu Luiyue and Chang Wanzhou, it was impossible to win all of them. The result was obvious. Chu Luiyue turned his head and said with a smile, "The competition is not over yet. Leader Zhang, don't be too full of yourself. It won't look good if you get slapped in the face." Zhang Hua's expression changed slightly, then he sneered, "I haven't seen you for a while, but you've become more and more arrogant. As everyone knows, I've always been lucky. I can't help it." Chu Luiyue's smile deepened, but his eyes were clear and cold. Zhang Hua was so angry that he laughed. "Good. Then I'd like to see how capable you are today. How dare you say such arrogant words?" Everyone looked at each other. They did not expect Chu Luiyue to be so fierce. He directly went against Zhang Hua as soon as he arrived. Yuchi Song frowned and asked in a low voice, "Lu Yu, do you think it's okay? If you can't, don't force yourself." Although this competition was important, Chu Luiyue's body was equally important. He was really worried about her covered in injuries, let alone let her take the risk. Chu Luiyue's eyes curved. "If you're really worried, I can go to the Xian master side to compete, right?" She had already heard someone say that there were 2 martial artist matches left in the competition. One was Celestial Physician, and the other was Xian Master. Chongshu Pavilion was 3 points behind. If they wanted to turn defeat into victory, they had to win all 4 of these matches. Not even a single draw was allowed. Yuchi Song was stunned. "Xian Master? You're not a martial artist or celestial physician, you're a full cultivator." Chu Luiyue nodded with a smile. When she participated in the Wanzheng competition previously, she did not display her strength in this aspect, so almost no one knew. Moreover, during this period of time, she had been cultivating in the Chongshu Pavilion during the day and sharpening her sword at night, so she did not have time to tell them this. Yuchi Song was shocked and felt a trace of guilt at the same time. Lu Yu was his disciple, but he didn't even know that she was a Xian master. He was really not a qualified master. Chu Luiyue understood his expression and said softly, "Don't worry. Master, if you trust me, let me go for this match." Yuchi Song hesitated for a long time before finally nodding. Chu Luiyue pointed at Chang Wanzhou. "Then, let little Zhou try the 8th martial artist match. How about that?" Yuchi Song naturally had no objections. "That's what I was thinking." Chang Wanzhou was the only stage 6 martial artist on their side who had yet to go on stage. There was no more suitable candidate than him. Chu Luiyue turned to look at Chang Wanzhou, raised her chin, and smiled. "Little Zhou, why don't we compete and see who wins first?" Chang Wanzhou gripped the cloud sky copper sword in his hand tightly and nodded slightly at the smile on Chu Luiyue's face. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 630. No one expected that the Chongshu Pavilion would send out Chu Luiyue for the last Mystic Master competition. Everyone discussed animatedly when they saw the woman appear on the stage. What are the Chongshu Pavilion people thinking? They actually let Chu Luiyue participate in the Mystic Master competition? According to her strength, she can choose between a martial artist or a celestial physician. Both are stronger than a Mystic Master, right? So, didn't you see that there are only a few people left at the Chongshu Pavilion? There's no choice left. Speaking of which, can you guys tell? Chu Luiyue seems quite calm. Maybe she really has some skills? So what? It's basically impossible for a person who cultivates 3 things to be proficient in all of them. She's extremely talented as a martial artist, but as a mystic master, she should be more average. Moreover, her opponent is Meng Jing. He's the famous mystic master genius of the 9-Star Alliance. It's said that Meng Jing is only 25 years old this year, but he's already a level 6 mystic master. Even in the entire Xiling, he's an outstanding figure among the younger generation. Chu Luiyue is probably going to lose miserably this time. Chu Luiyue calmly walked to the stage and stood still. Opposite her, a young man walked over. He was thin and had high cheekbones. His face seemed to be faintly pale because he hadn't seen the sun for many years. He looked like a weak scholar. However, the occasional glint in his eyes revealed that he wasn't as easy to deal with as he appeared. Meng Jing, Chu Luiyue narrowed her eyes. She had some impression of this person. He came from a miserable background and had no parents. Later on, for some reason, someone discovered that he had astonishing talent as a mystic master, so he entered the 9-Star Alliance and became one of the top disciples in their sect. He was indeed talented, and more importantly, he was diligent and eager to learn. 2 years ago, he was only a level 5 mystic master, but now he was already a level 6 mystic master. His strength naturally couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. A round black stone slab was placed in front of each of them. Half a mystic formation was drawn on each stone slab, occupying half of the black stone slab. The remaining half was clean. The black stone slabs in front of you have half a mystic formation of the same level and power, but with different contents. These 2 mystic formations will start killing each other as you progress. The judge standing at the side glanced at the 2. There's no time limit for a Xian Master competition. The competition will only end if the person can completely draw out the Xian formation and clear the other person's Xian formation. And that person will be the final winner. Chu Luiyue nodded at Meng Jing. Please. Meng Jing raised his eyes slightly and glanced at her expressionlessly. Then, he turned his gaze away and looked at the judge at the side. Let's begin. I don't have time to waste. Chu Luiyue raised her brows slightly. He didn't put her in his eyes at all. What a coincidence. I also want to end this competition as soon as possible. Chu Luiyue didn't seem to mind at all. Her lips curled up slightly as she walked forward and sat cross-legged in front of the black stone slab. She actually started right away. Since the other party was so impolite, she didn't have to hold back. Meng Jing frowned and felt dissatisfied. She was indeed a lowly person from outside heaven's canopy. She didn't even know the rules. However, there was no point in arguing with her about this. Anyway, the competition was going to end soon. Then, he also walked to the black stone slab and looked down. He was standing. Chu Luiyue seemed to have sensed something. She looked at him and found it funny. This Meng Jing seemed to have a lot of confidence in himself. Could it be that he felt that this mystic formation was too simple and didn't need to sit down and think to solve it smoothly? But she glanced at it just now. This mystic formation didn't seem to be that easy, of course. This was for Meng Jing. For her, as though he sensed her gaze, Meng Jing looked over with a trace of disgust and contempt in his eyes. Chu Luiyue smiled and didn't seem to mind. She lowered her head and started to study the half-mystic formation. On the other side, Chang Wanzhou also walked up to the arena. His opponent was still a rank 6 warrior. And both of them were at the early stage, so they were evenly matched. With the experience of the previous competition, everyone felt that the 2 of them would be in a stalemate again. They would probably have to wait for a long time again. Chang Wanzhou's expression was cold as he looked at the young man opposite of him. The other party sized him up from head to toe with an unfriendly gaze. I heard that you are the second in the Wanzheng competition? Chang Wanzhou didn't have the patience to talk to him about this. He just slowly tightened his grip on the cloud sky copper sword in his hand. Let's end this quickly. Hearing him say that, the other party was stunned. He obviously didn't expect him to be so direct. Being humiliated in public caused his expression to become even uglier. Since you're courting death, then don't blame me for being impolite. As he said that, a long sword suddenly appeared in his hand. Chang Wanzhou's gaze slowly swept across his sword. Immediately, he circulated the force in his body and poured it into the sword. Buzz. A melodious and mellow sword hum instantly spread out. Many people revealed shocked expressions and looked at the sword in Chang Wanzhou's hand. That was clearly not an ordinary sword. The man opposite him was also shocked. He also used a sword, so he could naturally feel the terrifying aura contained in Chang Wanzhou's sword. An ominous premonition suddenly surged in his heart. The next moment, he gritted his teeth and took the lead to charge forward. Chang Wanzhou stood on the spot and didn't move an inch. He also raised his sword. Then it slashed down fiercely. Everyone was shocked when they saw this. Chang Wanzhou's sword was still quite a distance away from the other party. Swish, the void in front of him was instantly torn open. A piercingly cold and terrifying sword aura surged out. In an instant, the man was enveloped in it. A shrill cry of pain was instantly heard. The next moment, under everyone's gaze, the man's body flew backward. He fell heavily to the ground. The sword in his hand was cut into countless pieces by countless sword auras. The cuts were all smooth and flat. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. What's going on with Chang Wanzhou's sword? It was just a casual stroke, but it was so powerful. Chang Wanzhou took a step forward. It's time to end this. Whoosh! Before he could move, he suddenly heard a strange sound coming from the side. At the same time, a clear and bright female voice with a smile was heard. I won. Chang Wanzhou's heart skipped a beat. He immediately turned his head to look. Chu Liwei happened to turn her head and look over. She blinked and repeated herself with a smile. Little Zhou, I won. Digression, my head hurts. That's all for today. Tomorrow at noon, please browse and read for mobile users. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 631. Chang Wanzhou stood rooted to the ground in a daze for a while. She won? His gaze landed on the black stone slab in front of her. Sure enough, the Xian formation on it had been completed. Meng Jing, on the other hand, was staring at the black stone slab beside his feet in disbelief. Half of the Xian formation on it had already collapsed. It had completely disappeared. This proved that Chu Liwei had indeed completed her half of the Xian formation and had completely destroyed his. His face was pale as he kept muttering, how is this possible? The competition had just begun. He hadn't even thought of how to begin, but Chu Liwei had already completed it. He suddenly looked up and shouted with an agitated expression, You cheated! You must have cheated! Chu Liwei raised her eyebrows and glanced at him. I cheated? Do you have any evidence? Meng Jing choked, but he still clenched his fists and said hatefully, Why you? If you didn't cheat, how could you, a level 4 Xian master, complete this half of the Xian formation so quickly? This is a level 6 Xian formation. Moreover, this Xian formation was more complicated than a typical level 6 Xian formation. Even if he was a genuine level 6 Xian master, he would still have to put in a lot of effort. What more Chu Liwei? It's your problem if you can't do it. Others can do it because they have the ability. I don't think it's appropriate to slander someone without any evidence, right? Could it be that everyone in the 9-star alliance is such sore losers? Chu Liwei stood up. At this moment, the man who had been forced back by Chang Wanzhou took the opportunity to charge forward again. Chang Wanzhou turned around and glanced at him coldly. A trace of fear suddenly appeared in the man's heart. Then, he clenched his teeth and actually drew two short swords from his waist. They stabbed toward Chang Wanzhou in unison. There was a thin layer of ice on the two short swords, and they were cold and awe-inspiring. Chang Wanzhou was as still as a mountain. He raised the sword in his hand again. He quickly blocked in front of him. Clang clang. The two short swords fiercely stabbed into the body of the cloud sky copper sword. However, he was easily stopped. He couldn't even leave a mark on the sword, let alone break it. The determined look on the man's face froze for a moment. These two short swords were his trump cards, and they could cut through iron like it was mud. Chang Wanzhou suddenly took a step back. With a flip of his wrist, he lifted the man's two short swords. Whoosh, an ear-piercing scraping sound was heard, and sparks of blue sparks flew in all directions on the blade. The man suddenly felt that something was wrong and immediately wanted to retreat. This sword is dangerous. However, before he could move, Chang Wanzhou's sword was already in front of him. Piercingly cold sword chi rushed towards him. The man's vision blurred and he suddenly felt a chill in his chest. After that, a wave of intense pain came. He stiffened his neck and slowly lowered his head to look. A sword had already pierced through his right chest. The clothes in front of his chest were gradually stained with dark red blood. His lips trembled, but he didn't dare to move. Whoosh! Chang Wanzhou pulled back his sword. The wound seemed to be burning with flames, but it also seemed to be frozen by ice. The two extreme forces fought against each other, and it almost made him faint. Plop! His body suddenly fell to the ground. The two short swords in his hands also fell to the ground messily. Chang Wanzhou looked down at him and coldly spat out a sentence. "Is that thing of yours worthy of being called a sword?" The man who fell to the ground trembled and didn't dare to speak. Chang Wanzhou pointed the tip of his sword at him. "Admit defeat? If you don't, we can continue. This time, it will be your left chest." The man shuddered violently. "Admit defeat? I admit defeat." He didn't doubt that if Chang Wanzhou dared to say that, he really dared to do it. The wild and untamed nature on his body and the aura that was like that of a ferocious beast all proved that he was extremely dangerous. Who knew what else he would do? Chang Wanzhou kept his sword and turned to leave. Everyone was at a loss. The competition ended just like that? Chang Wanzhou only used 2 strikes from the beginning to the end, and he won just like that? Chang Wanzhou walked to the side and stood still. He took out a snow-white handkerchief from his bosom and seriously wiped away the remaining bloodstains on the cloud sky copper sword. His expression was very focused, as if winning the competition just now wasn't as important as this sword. The surroundings were silent. The corners of Chu Liyue's mouth twitched, and he seemed to be smiling. "Looks like I was right. The people from the 9-Star Alliance really can't afford to lose. They either spout nonsense and casually slander others, or take advantage of the situation to launch a sneak attack? Unfortunately, no matter how many messy methods and thoughts they have, they are worthless in front of absolute strength." "You!" Meng Jing's face turned red. "How dare you?" Chu Liyue blinked and asked very sincerely, "I won. Little Zhou also won. If we don't act impudently, would it be your turn to act impudently?" Even children know that strength is respected. If you're willing to bet, you must be willing to admit defeat. Why don't the people from the 9-Star Alliance know this? There are so many people watching the competition just now. Do you still want to deny it? Chu Liyue's few words made Meng Jing so angry that he felt dizzy and his lungs were about to explode. His chest heaved up and down violently. Then, he strode toward Chu Liyue. "I want to see your Xian formation." Chu Liyue stood up with a smile. "Looks like you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. All right. Since you want to see it, go ahead and take a look." Meng Jing walked to the front of the black stone slab and stared at it for a long time. The more he looked, the uglier his expression became. The Xian formation on it had indeed been completed. Moreover, it was smooth and perfect. There was no mistake to pick out. Chu Liyue smiled and asked with concern, "How is it? Did you find evidence of me cheating?" Meng Jing didn't move, and his face was ashen. Chu Luiwei raised his voice slightly. Meng Jing gritted his teeth. Consider it your win this time. With that, he planned to leave. Chu Luiwei blocked his path. What do you mean by, consider it my win? I won this competition in the first place. Meng Jing's expression could no longer be described as ugly. Ever since he entered the 9-Star Alliance, he had always been one of the best among the many disciples and was highly regarded. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been allowed to compete in the last Xian Master competition. Originally, he was confident of victory and didn't take Chu Luiwei seriously at all. But who knew that he would lose so miserably in the end? This was undoubtedly a huge blow to him. I lost. After a short stalemate, he finally said these 3 words quickly. Chu Luiwei narrowed his eyes in satisfaction. Couldn't you have done this earlier? You wasted my time for no reason. Meng Jing's body stiffened. He felt as if he had been slapped in public. Chu Luiwei clapped his hands and walked away with relaxed steps. Meng Jing suddenly turned around and asked. Chapter 632. As soon as he said that, everyone looked over curiously. This was actually what they wanted to ask too. On Chang Wanzhou's side, they had at least seen him make 2 moves, but on Chu Luiwei's side, he had won too quickly. It felt like the competition had already ended before they had seen anything, other than the complete Xian formation on the black stone slab that could prove that she had indeed won with her own strength. No one else had seen it clearly. It was no wonder that Meng Jing would be so agitated and question her continuously. Chu Luiwei stopped in his tracks and turned to look at him. He smiled matter-of-factly. Because I'm powerful. Meng Jing. Everyone. Yi Ran tugged at Lu Jiao's sleeve and asked softly, Senior brother Lu, isn't Lu Yu a little arrogant like this? The corners of Lu Jiao's mouth twitched. How is this, a little? The word, arrogant, was clearly written on his face. But what's with this feeling? So what if he's arrogant? Didn't little junior sister say just now that the winner isn't arrogant? Are we going to let the loser be arrogant? Those people from the 9-Star Alliance were so arrogant just now. They didn't take us seriously at all. Now that little junior sister is teaching them a lesson, it's an eye for an eye. Ever since the competition started, they had been bullied and were almost suffocated to death. Now that they finally had a chance to retaliate, of course, they had to make good use of it. Hearing his words, Yi Ran nodded in agreement. Senior brother Lu, you're right. Didn't they say that Meng Jing was the most outstanding Xian master genius in the 9-Star Alliance? In the end, he lost to Lu Yu the moment he came up. I think that title is fake. TSK, was the competition just now lasting for half an incense stick? I don't remember, right? It's a good thing that Meng Jing didn't sit down. Otherwise, he would have to get up as soon as he sat down. It would be quite troublesome, right? It's fine if he lost, but he actually slandered Lu Yu for cheating. There are so many people watching. Are they all blind? Is he the only one with eyes? In my opinion, he's not blind. He's just too evil. Little junior brother is also amazing. 2 swords to finish him off. They're both rank 6 warriors. Why is the difference so big? The disciples of Chongshu Pavilion opened their mouths one after another and spoke freely. In just a few words, they scolded Meng Jing from inside out and from top to bottom. Even the 9-Star Alliance was not spared. Who asked Meng Jing to be one of them? Previously, the 9-Star Alliance had mocked and ridiculed them. Now, they could finally hold their heads high. Meng Jing almost fainted from anger. Zhang Hua finally couldn't take it anymore and shouted angrily. What are you waiting for? Come back quickly. Wasn't it embarrassing enough? Meng Jing was suddenly jolted awake. Only then did he remember that he had lost this match. He was afraid that the Alliance Master was. He quickly glanced at Zhang Hua and saw that his face was filled with anger. He immediately lowered his head and walked back. Standing in front of Zhang Hua, his face was full of guilt. Alliance Master, please forgive me. I'm incompetent. Since you know that you're incompetent, hurry up and leave. Don't be an eyesore here. Zhang Hua was currently in a fit of anger, so the words that came out of his mouth were naturally extremely unpleasant. Meng Jing's face was red and white. He had never been reprimanded in public like this before. He lowered his head, suppressed the surging emotions in his heart, and retreated. No one on the 9-Star Alliance's side spoke. It was silent. Many people secretly looked at Meng Jing with different expressions. It was fine if others lost, but Meng Jing, he was almost the best Xian master among the many disciples of the 9-Star Alliance. It was really strange that he lost to Chu Luiyue. However, they had clearly seen the scene of the competition just now. Chu Luiyue did win. Is there really something wrong? Soon, the other disciple who lost to Chang Wanzhou also returned dejectedly. The aura around Zhang Hua was as cold as ice. After losing 2 matches in a row, no one would be in a good mood. Moreover, they lost so decisively and completely. He looked at the remaining 2 people who were about to go on stage. You can only win these last 2 matches, you can't lose. Do you hear me? Previously, Chongshu Pavilion was 3 points behind them, but now, they had caught up by 2 points in the blink of an eye. If Chongshu Pavilion won another match, they would be able to tie the score. If they won 2 matches, they would truly turn defeat into victory. He absolutely would not allow that to happen. If you lose, you know the consequences. The 2 of them trembled in unison and immediately said in a deep voice, "We understand." Chu Luiyue walked to Chang Wanzhou's side and saw that he was still wiping his sword. His expression was cold and he seemed to be a little unhappy. "Little Zhou, aren't you happy that you won the match?" Although that person was not a challenge to Chang Wanzhou, he was still a rank 6 warrior after all. It was a good thing to win this match. Chu Luiyue looked at him and suddenly thought of something. "You're not unhappy because you lost to me, are you?" Chang Wanzhou finally stopped what he was doing and looked up at her. "No." A hint of awkwardness appeared on the young man's exquisite and beautiful face. "He dirted my sword." Chu Luiyue was stunned for a moment before she reacted. He's unhappy because the Cloud Sky Copper Sword was stained with that person's blood just now? Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But this is a sword. It has to be stained with blood, right? Chang Wanzhou turned his head away and didn't say anything. This was the sword that she had forged after enduring incomparable torture, and she had given it to him just like that. He looked calm on the surface, but in reality he cherished this treasure very much. This was why his sword didn't even touch the other party's body at the beginning. In the end, it was still stained with blood. The blood of that kind of person wasn't qualified to touch the sword. He stubbornly wiped the sword again before finally saying in a low voice, "But you've suffered a lot for this sword." Chu Luiyue's heart warmed slightly. "Little Zhou, this sword was originally meant for you. To be able to get you to value it so much, what happened before, is nothing." Hearing Chu Luiyue's words, Taizu, who had finally calmed down, felt waves in his heart again. He tried to hold it in, but he couldn't. "Lass, you don't seem to be the one who suffered the most, right? What about those Tianlei people who were taught a lesson? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 633. Chu Luiyue coughed. In the beginning, she had indeed experienced a lot of torture. At that time, she didn't know that it would develop to such a state. The injuries on her body hadn't healed yet. Hearing Chu Luiyue's words, Chang Wanzhou's expression eased up a little. Chu Luiyue returned to Yu Qisong and the others. Everyone had excited looks on their faces. "Little junior sister. So your talent as a Xian master is so outstanding? Why haven't I heard you mention it before?" "That's right. Meng Jing's expression was so ugly just now. Little junior brother too. How long has it been? His strength seems to have increased again? That sword of yours is really powerful." Yu Qisong looked at the 2 of them with a rueful expression. Although he knew that the 2 of them were extremely outstanding, he didn't expect them to win so quickly. It was simply a crushing defeat. His gaze swept across the Cloud Sky Copper Sword in Chang Wanzhou's hand. When he saw that there seemed to be 3 lightning-like silver patterns on the sword hilt, he was shocked. This sword seemed to be forged by Chu Luiyue and given to Chang Wanzhou. However, those 3 lines, didn't they only appear when the heavenly lightning was triggered? Suddenly, his expression froze. Could it be that the injuries on Chu Luiyue's body were caused by Tianlei? Other than that, there didn't seem to be a more reasonable explanation. But she wasn't even a rank 5 warrior now, so how could she do that? Countless questions surfaced in his mind, and he wished he could immediately pull Chu Luiyue to ask her clearly. But now was obviously not the right time. Moreover, if this guess was true, then the injuries on her body were more serious than he had expected. When Chu Luiyue saw Yuqi Song staring at the cloud sky copper sword in deep thought, she guessed that he might already know something. However, she didn't intend to hide it. Yuqi Song was experienced and knowledgeable, so it was normal for him to be able to guess it. The 9th round of the warrior competition. 9-star alliance's Xie Lingyang. The judge's voice suddenly sounded. Elder Song, have you decided who will go on stage? Yuqi Song came back to his senses and looked at the arena. A young man walked up. His figure was strong and handsome, his skin was dark, and his aura was tyrannical. He was actually also an early-stage rank 6 martial artist. A trace of doubt flashed through Yuqi Song's heart. When did the 9-star alliance have so many rank 6 disciples? In the past, the 9-star alliance wasn't weak and had many outstanding disciples. But it was definitely not to this extent. Such a lineup could almost be compared to Dragon Teeth Mountain's lineup. Why do I feel that in less than a year, many of the 9-star alliance's disciples have suddenly improved by leaps and bounds? Elder Song. Seeing that Yuqi Song didn't respond for a long time, the person reminded her again. Yuqi Song frowned slightly. There were not many disciples in the Chongshu Pavilion to begin with. Apart from those who had already entered the arena, there were only a few left. Among these people, there was almost no one who could fight with Xie Lingyang. There should only be a few people in the Chongshu Pavilion who can still go on stage, right? Logically speaking, it should be easy to choose. Why hasn't Elder Song made a decision yet? Could it be that you can't choose? At this time, Zhang Hua definitely wouldn't miss this opportunity and wanted to ridicule them. If I remember correctly, Chang Wanzhou is your last rank 6 martial artist. He has already gone up just now, so you can't choose again. Elder Song, in my opinion, the remaining people, it's the same no matter who you choose. Why don't you just pick one? The disciples in the Chongshu Pavilion looked angry. Pavilion Master, I haven't gone up yet. Let me go. Me too. Even if my level isn't as good as Xie Lingyang's, we might not lose. Let's fight it out with them. Yuqi Song's gaze swept across the few of them. His heart was slightly warm, but it was also sour. These children were all good. Even though they knew that they had no chance of winning, none of them retreated. But he couldn't bear to see them being bullied. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounded. Master Togo. Yuqi Song looked up and widened his eyes slightly. Luyu? What did you say? Chu Luiyue smiled faintly. I said, let me go up for this round. Just as Yuqi Song was about to refuse, he saw Chu Luiyue blinking and whispering. Master, don't you know best how much this disciple is capable of? Yuqi Song was stunned. The scene of Chu Luiyue swallowing the messed yuan gravel suddenly appeared in his mind. She did have an extremely powerful trump card. Among these people, if there was anyone who had the ability to fight against Xie Lingyang, then it was really Chu Luiyue. But, no buts. Chu Luiyue shook her head, with a gentle and firm smile at the corners of her eyes. I will help you and the senior brothers and sisters to protect the status of the Chongshu Pavilion. No matter what, I will never let anyone trample on the Chongshu Pavilion. Yuqi Song's heart trembled violently. After a long silence, he finally nodded. But everything, I'll leave it to you. The other disciples were also shocked. But seeing Yuqi Song's firm expression, they didn't continue to argue and just cheered for Chu Luiyue. Little junior sister, it's up to you. Little junior sister, you can do it. Just do your best. We'll wait for you to come back. Chu Luiyue smiled and nodded at everyone. Master, senior brothers and sisters, don't worry. I won't let you down. After saying that, she turned around and walked toward the middle of the arena. Seeing that it was Chu Luiwei who went up to the arena again, everyone looked at each other and fell silent. Zhang Hua frowned and said, Chu Luiwei has already gone up just now. Why is she here again? Chu Luiwei asked. I participated in the Xian Master competition just now. The rules of the competition are that a person can't participate in the same competition consecutively, but they didn't say that a person can't participate in several competitions at the same time, right? The judge next to him thought for a moment and nodded. There's indeed no such rule. Zhang Hua choked. Opportunistic. So what if they sent Chu Luiwei up? He didn't believe that a mere Stage 4 warrior could be a match for a Stage 6 warrior. Even if Chu Luiwei had the ability to fight above her level, she definitely wouldn't be able to gain any advantage against a Stage 6 warrior. Hearing this, Chu Luiwei smiled and didn't care. Who cares what he says now? Right now, he had to win the competition first. She looked at Xie Lingyang opposite her. Chongshu Pavilion's Chu Luiwei is here to accept the challenge. Xie Lingyang sized up Chu Luiwei. Chu Luiwei was quite famous in Xiling recently. Everyone said that she defeated a Stage 5 warrior as a Stage 3 warrior. She had outstanding talent and was extremely strong. Later on, she even won first place in the Wanzheng competition and was in the limelight. You do have some ability. Xie Lingyang spoke with a proud expression. However, Stage 6 warriors and Stage 5 warriors are completely different levels. You can defeat an early Stage 5 warrior, but you might not be able to defeat a peak Stage 5 warrior. There's a huge gap between Stage 6 and Stage 6. Sometimes, it's not a good thing for young people to be too competitive. Before he could finish speaking, Chu Luiwei suddenly waved to the 9-Star Alliance's Ning Jiqing, who was already standing on the other side and preparing to participate in the last Celestial Physician competition. The last Celestial Physician competition is also mine. Please wait for me for a while. You can start first. I'll be right there. Digression, I don't update regularly during the day. Everyone can read it together at night. These few days, it's been more than 5 chapters, so the update time is unstable. After a few days, it will return to 5 chapters, and it will be stable. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 634. Xie Lingyang's voice stopped abruptly. Ning Jiqing, who was suddenly called out, was also at a loss. What? Chu Luiwei was going to participate in the last Celestial Physician competition? In the silence, Yi Ranran could not help but ask. Pavilion Master, did you decide on this matter just now? Yu Qisong was speechless. Even he did not know that Chu Luiwei had such a plan. However, now that he had said it, he could not refute it. He could only say, Lu Yu has his own plans. Xie Lingyang was furious. He had already seen Chu Luiwei's arrogance earlier, but he did not expect it to be even worse now. Swoosh! A silver spear suddenly appeared in his hand. The spear was covered with a thin layer of green scales. A triangular snake head was carved at the end of the spear. Under the sunlight, it glowed coldly. It looked like a real green python. Green python spear. Since you're still in a hurry to participate in the Celestial Physician competition, I'll personally send you on your way. Xie Lingyang shouted. He swung the spear and stabbed it directly at Chu Luiwei. In the wind, the green python's spear let out a snake-like hiss. Hiss, a bone-chilling coldness came at him. Chu Luiwei's expression turned cold. A red whip appeared in his hand. He swung it violently. Smith. The sound of something breaking through the air was heard. The red whip immediately wrapped around the green python spear. Whoosh, the blazing flames swept out, and everywhere they passed, there was the sound of burning. The green scales on the spear suddenly stood up. It was ferocious and terrifying. Xie Lingyang clenched the spear in his hand and suddenly turned it. The sharp green scales instantly scraped past the red whip. The whip collapsed into countless flames and splashed everywhere. Xie Lingyang took a step forward. The spear went straight for Chu Liyue's heart. Chu Liyue immediately set up a barrier in front of him. Scales go. Xie Lingyang let out a clear cry. The countless green scales on the spear suddenly flew up. Like extremely sharp blades, they instantly enveloped Chu Liyue. Whoosh, whoosh. Several cracks immediately appeared on the barrier. Then, it silently shattered. Xie Lingyang moved forward. Just as the sharp tip of the spear was about to pierce Chu Liyue's chest, a red figure suddenly flashed. It quickly and nimbly landed on the spear. Xie Lingyang glanced from the corner of his eye. It was actually a furry third-grade blood ferret. Sensing Xie Lingyang's gaze, Tuanzi squatted there and suddenly grinned at him. In the next moment, it bit at the spear. The green scales on the spear, the spear, was smooth Xie Lingyang's. Tuanzi didn't worry about being pricked, so she used all her strength in this bite. Crack. 2 neat rows of teeth marks were left on the body of the spear. Xie Lingyang's heart suddenly trembled, and even his hands trembled. This was a idiot treasure. It was extremely hard. Now, it was bitten by a blood ferret? While he was in a daze, Chu Liyue moved and disappeared on the spot. Xie Lingyang's heart sank. A cold wind came from behind. He did not have time to react and could only quickly rush forward. However, he was still a step too late. His back was cut by a sharp dagger, leaving a bloody gash. Xie Lingyang felt a sharp pain and was extremely angry. He once again circulated the force in his body. This time, he did not hold back and used all his strength. A powerful pressure spread out from his body. Beginner stage 6. The surrounding space seemed to have become heavy. Xie Lingyang said coldly, "I couldn't tell that you had some skills. But this is the end." After speaking, he suddenly turned the spear in his hand. The triangular snake head at the end suddenly pointed at Chu Liyue. Green scales. Wake up. Vigorous force continuously poured in from the snake head. At the same time, the green scales that had flown out earlier also flew back. The originally tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. A fierce and cold aura came from all directions. Then, under everyone's astonished gaze, a huge green figure appeared above Xie Lingyang's head. It was a giant python covered in green scales. A pair of yellow vertical pupils were cold and indifferent, and it kept spitting out its scarlet tongue. It was a 6th-grade magical beast, the triangular green scale python. Chu Liyue narrowed his eyes. No wonder this spear was so strange. It was because there was such a thing sealed inside. One had to know that a 6th-grade warrior's strength was weaker than a 6th-grade magical beast. Even with Xie Lingyang's current strength, it was impossible for him to subdue this triangular green scale python. But for some reason, this magical beast was shrunk in the spear, and Xie Lingyang became the owner of this spear. Naturally, he became the owner of this triangular green scale python. "Kill it," Xie Lingyang ordered. The triangular green scale python swung its long tail and swept towards Dumpling. Dumpling's figure flashed and quickly dodged. A cold, murderous intent flashed across the triangular green scale python's eyes. It stretched out its head and spat out a cold breath. That cold breath quickly turned into thumb-sized icicles and attacked Dumpling. Everyone saw a red figure jumping around in midair. Tuck, tuck, tuck. Those icicles were all avoided by Dumpling and fell to the ground. The triangular green-scaled python gradually became impatient and finally pressed down on Tuanzi. Dumpling looked up at the huge creature approaching her. Is it for real? When the 2 magical beasts began to prepare for battle, Xie Lingyang looked at Chu Liyue again. He overlapped his hands in front of him. Rays of faint blue light gradually intertwined in front of him, forming a strange pattern. The surrounding energy of heaven and earth suddenly converged towards him. A cry of surprise came from the crowd. This is an Earth-rank martial skill. Looks like Xie Lingyang really doesn't intend to give Chu Liyue any chance. Not only did he send out the triangular green-scale python, he even used a killing move. I'm afraid Chu Liyue is going to lose this time. To be able to force Xie Lingyang to use such a method is enough to prove Chu Liuyue's strength. It's a pity. What is Chu Liyue doing? Whoosh whoosh. A fierce wind suddenly rose. It rolled up the corner of Chu Liuyue's clothes. Her black hair flew. His black jade-like eyes were filled with unswerving determination. Facing Xie Lingyang's attack, Chu Liuyue's face showed no fear. On the contrary, she stood on the spot with a calm and indifferent expression and raised her right hand. A dot of starlight appeared on her index finger. The starlight was extremely small, but it instantly attracted the surrounding energy of heaven and earth. Chu Liyue is also using an earth-rank martial skill? Gasps could be heard from the crowd. I remember now. When Chu Liyue first came to West Hill, she seemed to have used this move to defeat that rank 5 warrior. But she was only a rank 3 warrior at that time, and the power of that martial skill was clearly not so strong, that's for sure. Earth-rank martial skills consume a lot of force, and even a rank 6 warrior can only barely use it. Chu Liyue is only at the peak of rank 4 now. How long had it been, and her strength had increased to such a level? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 635. Surprise flashed across Xie Lingyang's eyes when he saw that Chu Liyue had also triggered such a phenomenon. A peak level 4 could actually use an earth-rank martial technique? Using an earth-rank martial technique required too much force. Was Chu Liyue not worried that she would not be able to withstand it? This thought only flashed through his mind. Xie Lingyang did not think too much about it. He focused again and urged the force in his body to circulate. A faint blue seal gradually condensed in front of him. On the other side, the light on Chu Liuyue's fingertip gradually became brighter. The surrounding heaven and earth energy seemed to be attracted by a strong force and rushed over. That ray of light shone on Chu Liuyue's porcelain-like face, reflecting her deep and bright eyes as if there were sparks blooming in them. Previously, she did not use the complete Jingxin finger. And this time, it was her first real attempt after comprehending the Jingxin finger. She was also very curious about how powerful the Jingxin finger could be at her current level. Just as the two people on the ground were accumulating power for their ultimate moves, the two demonic beasts in the air were also in a stalemate. It was not accurate to call it a stalemate, because the difference in size between the two figures was too great. Dumpling was only the size of one of the triangular green-scale python's eyes. The latter only needed to open its mouth to easily swallow it. Moreover, one was a level 3 while the other was a level 6. Wasn't it obvious which one would win? The triangular green-scale python stared at Dumpling in front of it, its eyes filled with anger. Logically speaking, a mere third-rank magical beast should not have been able to dodge his attack. However, this blood ferret's speed seemed to be faster than ordinary blood ferrets, and its reaction was also more agile. It attacked consecutively, but the opponent easily escaped. This made it feel embarrassed. As if feeling its anger, Tuanzi blinked its eyes and suddenly raised its claws, hooking them at Tuanzi. Come on. The triangular green-scale python's pupils instantly contracted into an extremely thin line. It instantly opened its bloody mouth and swallowed Dumpling. A strong suction force suddenly erupted. Dumpling was surrounded by a sudden gust of wind. Its body seemed to be pulled away by an invisible force. Soon, it arrived in front of the triangular green-scaled python. His sharp white teeth glowed with a cold luster. At this moment, Dumpling's figure moved, and she actually took the initiative to pounce on the triangular green-scaled python. The triangular green-scaled python was caught off guard. When it tried to stop it, it realized that the blood ferret had already landed on its head. Hiss, hiss. The green triangular python shook its head in an attempt to shake him off. However, Dumpling's claws were so sharp that they cut through the scale right above its head. The green triangular scale python suddenly let out a painful hiss. That was the most important and also the most fragile scale on its body. Triangular scale armor. Its body began to twist crazily. Dumpling clung tightly to the broken triangular scale. It refused to come down no matter what. Sensing the increasing pain on its head, the green triangular scale python became anxious. It steeled its heart and directly swung its tail at Dumpling. Dumpling lifted her head and immediately pulled out the triangular scale. The green triangular scale python's body trembled in pain, and fresh blood splattered everywhere. Dumpling retreated without hesitation. A muffled sound was heard. The green triangular scale python had ruthlessly swung its tail at its own head. In its shock and anger, it had lost control of its strength, and this hit was extremely vicious. Its head, which was already injured, became even worse. Stars appeared in front of its eyes, and it almost fainted. Dumpling was not far away, hovering in the air. Her claws were still holding onto a bloodied scale that was even bigger than her body. There was not a single injury on her body. This scene was truly too strange, to the extent that all the spectators fell silent in unison with strange expressions on their faces. These days, third-grade blood ferrets had become so strong? Dumpling looked disdainfully at the scale in her claws. Although the green triangular scale python was a sixth-grade magical beast, its intelligence was not high. It only had brute force. Sigh, it was really not a challenge. She grabbed the scale with both claws, and under the green triangular scale python's horrified gaze, she twisted it. Crack! That scale instantly broke into two halves. The green triangular scale python let out a mournful roar. The scales on its body actually started to fade rapidly. In the blink of an eye, the original green color had already turned into a grayish-white color. Everyone was dumbfounded. Below, Xianxia seemed to have sensed something, and he suddenly looked up. When he saw the green triangular scale python's current appearance, the color on his face instantly faded. How could this be? The green triangular scale python's body writhed in pain in midair. Gradually, that layer of grayish-white scales actually started to peel off its body. It was actually being forced to shed its skin. The most praiseworthy part of the green triangular scale python's body was its tough, armor-like scales. But it had a fatal weakness, and that was the triangular scale on the top of its head. Once it was damaged, the scales on its entire body would be damaged as well, causing it to shed its skin. After shedding its skin, it would need at least a month's time to grow scales as tough as before. In other words, the green triangular scale python had basically lost its ability to fight now. Dumpling flew back to Chu Luiyue, wagging her tail as if asking for credit. Chu Luiyue glanced at it with a smile. This little thing's ability seemed to have improved. Just now, she only gave it a warning, and it attacked so steadily, accurately, and ruthlessly. It did not even give the other party any chance to retaliate. On the opposite side, Xianxia's face turned green. When he saw the green triangular scale python being summoned back, his anger almost gushed out like magma. Chu Luiyue was too much of a bully. He growled, and the blue talisman in front of him silently flew out. 9 soul-capturing talisman. That talisman grew with the wind. In the blink of an eye, it had already expanded to the height of a person. Blue light flickered on it. It was bizarre and variegated. The pressure was heavy. Chu Luiyue's right hand gently pointed forward. Jingshan finger. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 636. With Chu Luiyue as the center, a speck of starlight rapidly bloomed. The space around her seemed to be squeezed by a great force and began to ripple uneasily. On the opposite side, the blue talisman seemed to have sensed the terrifying aura and gradually slowed down. Xianxia's smug smile had not fully formed when it completely froze. His 9 soul-capturing talisman seemed to be afraid of something. Chu Luiyue's red lips moved slightly. Condense! Countless starlight rapidly gathered and condensed into a silver finger with flowing brilliance. Then, the finger approached the 9 soul-capturing talisman at a slow and steady speed. Xianxia gritted his teeth and injected another stream of force. Boom. The forces of both sides finally collided fiercely. Light scattered everywhere. A crack suddenly appeared on the 9 soul-capturing talisman. Then, a blue stream of light was quickly thrown out like a rope. Then, it tightly wrapped around the silver finger. Then a second one. A third one. A 9th one. On the 9 soul-capturing talisman, 9 black ropes wrapped around each other and tightly bound the finger, and began to tighten continuously. Seeing that the silver finger was completely bound, Xie Lingyang finally heaved a sigh of relief. As long as, bang, one of the ropes suddenly broke. Xie Lingyang's heart jumped again. The finger moved slightly and easily broke free from one of the ropes. Then a second one. Bang, 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 bang. Almost without any pause, the ropes broke one after another. It was as easy as crushing dry weeds. Before Xie Lingyang could react, he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. His face was as pale as a sheet. In order to use the 9 soul-capturing talisman, he had used up all the force in his body. Now that the talisman was destroyed, he naturally suffered a backlash. It was as if countless sharp arrows were crazily running back and forth in his body, almost smashing his internal organs. As the ropes broke one by one, more and more cracks appeared on the 9 soul-capturing talisman. Bang bang. In the blink of an eye, there was only one rope left out of the 9 ropes. It was on the verge of collapse. On the other hand, Chu Luiwei was calm and unharmed. The difference between the two was obvious. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Chu Luiwei had the upper hand in this battle. My God, not only did Chu Luiwei use an Earth-grade martial skill, but it seems to be even stronger than Xie Lingyang's. I think she's bound to win this match. I really didn't expect her to have such a trump card. No wonder she insisted on fighting herself. If Chong Su Cabinet wins this round, both parties can be considered to be on par. Xie Lingyang's actually not weak, he's strong, but he's as of him. Meeting Chu Luiwei this time was like kicking an iron plate. A rank 6 warrior losing to a peak rank 4 warrior. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, no one would believe it. Zhangzi's of him of a person. Xie Lingyang Feng to Yang to the talisman to hims of AA of the two to be. The members of the 9-star alliance also quietened down, not daring to make a sound. They were afraid that they would provoke the alliance leader and bring trouble to themselves. Xie Lingyang felt uneasy under the gazes of countless people. He inadvertently looked up and saw Zhang Hua looking at him with a cold gaze. He instantly remembered that before he went on stage, Zhang Hua had given him a death order. He could only win, not lose. If he really lost to Chulu, Xie Lingyang seemed to have thought of something and suddenly shuddered. Then, as if he had finally decided on something, he swallowed the blood in his mouth and fiercely bit his index finger. A dark red bead of blood quickly gushed out. With a flick of his finger, the blood bead quickly flew onto the 9 soul-capturing talisman. It was like a drop of ink suddenly falling into water. The dark blue talisman began to turn blood red at a speed visible to the naked eye. The previous cracks were repaired in the blink of an eye, and the entire talisman became more solid. The thick smell of blood instantly filled the air. At the same time, a terrifying aura seemed to be gushing out from the depths of the talisman. The last remaining rope also turned blood red, and several more ropes spread out from it, once again wrapping around that finger. Silver and blood intertwined and fought crazily. Boom! At this moment, Xie Lingyang's aura suddenly began to skyrocket. Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed. Something was wrong with Xie Lingyang. That blood bead just now, it wasn't that there were no cultivation methods that could temporarily raise one's cultivation level, but Xie Lingyang's was too strange. It exuded a cold and sinister aura that made people shudder. The wind whistled. Vaguely, there seemed to be wailing and moaning coming from the 9 soul-capturing talisman. Soon, Xie Lingyang's strength rose to the middle of stage 6. For a powerhouse of this level, the difference in strength between each small level was huge. Chu Luiwei was already at a disadvantage because she was fighting above her level. Now that Xie Lingyang had used a special method to raise his level, it was even more disadvantageous for Chu Luiwei. Xiaolingyang's eyes were bloodshot and filled with crazy killing intent. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. Soul devouring. Xiaolingyang bellowed. The wind howled, and the 9 soul-capturing talismans suddenly spun. As the talismans spun, the blood-colored rope on it also began to strangle the silver finger. A crack instantly appeared on the wall. Chu Liyue's body trembled. Her mouth was filled with a sweet and fishy taste. She swallowed that mouthful of blood. At this moment, half of the finger had already been devoured by the 9 soul-capturing talisman. It was about to disappear completely. A wild smile appeared on Xiaolingyang's face. You've lost. Chu Liyue gritted her teeth, and a hint of madness flashed across her face. It's not certain who will win yet. Xiaolingyang sneered disdainfully. You're still so stubborn when you're about to die. It's not too late for you to admit defeat now. Otherwise, it'll be useless even if you kneel down and beg me later. Chu Liyue didn't say anything. The water droplet in her dantian suddenly rippled. She raised her hand, boom. A vast aura surged out. Xiaolingyang's expression suddenly froze. The light on Chu Liyue's index finger, which was as weak as a candle in the wind, suddenly shone brightly. Then, a star separated from it and gently fell on the finger next to it. Stun God Palm. Digression, have a meal and continue to update. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.